sits on a lot of data, and it doesn't have a lot of scruples about how it uses it. And so, they may be, quite able actually to figure out, and track the movements and identify, human operators. And so it'll make the human
what we call
part
spies.
spies, good old-fashioned spies.
This is right out of Mission Impossible, I believe, with Tom Cruise.
And so it'll make that work, harder. But in my view, like, that work is no less important. We rely on all of the sources of intelligence to give us the best and most accurate threat picture.
Do you think countries will become more inclined to run AI-operated cyber operations? Or does that pose risk in and of itself?
I think it's likely that they will, integrate AI into their operations. Right. We already see that on the influence operations front, for example. So, I do think that we should expect to see, basically our most persistent and advanced competitors use all of the tools at their disposal to, achieve, asymmetric advantage in this competition. There's no reason to think that they wouldn't, use AI tools as well.
I'm sure if I had their officials here, they would say the United States is doing this against them. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let's talk about the area that you spent the most time working on, foreign influence operations. First, just sort of paint a picture for me as you sort of look out at foreign influence operations. We've seen efforts by countries to meddle in the U.S. election. Obviously, a lot of talk in 2016 about Russian efforts.
Hello, my name is Sabrina Wallace. I have been working very hard to explain to anyone who wants to know that we have a different type of warfare called cognitive warfare. Cognitive warfare that targets human minds to influence thought, emotion, and decision making. Hey, y'all, let me know if you can hear me all right, if the sound is good. Oh, you're welcome. Miss Amanda, if you're the person who is looking for the PDFs, they are on the Synergy channel. What you can do, because there's only 5 pages there at the moment. Awesome. Thank you. Hey, you girl. Appreciate that. So for the PDFs, like, you go here to the channel and you will see a difference. Anything that's a video's got the timestamps on it. And then right here, you'll see this one has what looks like a little diskette. That's because this is a PDF. These are PDFs as well. And then you have the FDA PDF, Crystal Healing, the Golden Dome, the Synergy Empathy Workbook PDF, and the primary tech metric PDF is back here. It says Synergy Tech Metric PDF, February 2025. That way you can get them all. You can get one, whatever you want to do. If you just want to read them without printing them, you can do that too. Just goes through page by page. The links are all there. You should be able to copy and paste so that you can search what you want to look at. Okay. Okay. So this cognitive warfare issue has been coming up repeatedly because we are not dealing with our warfare doctrine, network-centric warfare. So we have a lot of people that are really caught up for years now in what they call PSYOPs. But they don't seem to, the same people that are very caught up in their PSYOPs, they don't seem to know much, if anything, about neural networks, graph math, brain-computer interface. And these are the tools that are deployed, not only with artificial intelligence, but 5 years of our Pentagon convergence. So a year ago, I went to NATO because the people here in the United States, they're still not dealing with our warfare doctrine. They're stuck in 1995. Influencer creations of narratives have rendered people into polarized camps, thinking they know it all on both sides. And then people in the middle who are trying to figure out what's actually happening, we end up fighting in ways that we don't need to be. We need to be talking about reality. That says Chapter 9, Human Machine Teaming towards a holistic understanding of cognitive warfare. Yeah, it's called brain-computer interface. So, a form of warfare that targets human minds to influence thought, emotion, and decision-making. It can be waged by bullshitting you to death with social media and fake news. But it can also be waged by AI and neuroscience. See this right here? Driven by advances in AI and neuroscience. Okay. And this is where the problem is. Psychology is not neurology. When we talk about behavior analysis, that's not the same thing as wetware. And that's where the problem is. Because we're not talking about brain-computer interface and wetware with our genome. We have software out there like this, Bioconductor. And this open source wetware software is for bioinformatics. Now, that means that anything that has to do with your genome annotation can be loaded into software like this and then loaded onto a phone. Now, when we say beam steering with our phase array, a lot of people have no idea what's that about. They're all wound up with Palantir, and they think because of the influence operations with the Q and the other embedded clearances, they have no idea that these people in our governments worldwide are under the skin. They're dealing in neurons. They're not dealing in just what you hear. They're not wiretapping your house and then using algorithms based on what you clicked on by itself. Hardly at all at this point in time. Okay. So, cognitive warfare targets your human condition. Cognitive warfare uses a convergence of technologies like AI, machine learning, neuroscience, and biotechnology. That's right. So we have Bioconductor, and it's using microarrays. Oh, you mean like point of care or biosensors? See, it's right there on the right-hand side. It says miniaturized biosensors. And those biosensors are what this little phone is talking to. 802.15.4 on that millimeter wave. And the 802.15.4 is called intra-body communication, under the skin. Now, this is old. It's been updated 10 years ago to nano networks. The nano is measurement via nanometrology, which is a scientific discipline with internationally recognized standards to measure at the micrometer, millimeter, and nano scale. And here we have the body area networks, the ad hoc mesh networks, meaning air molecules, other Wi-Fi, whatever's available. And then you have under the skin. PHY is the physical layer of computer networking. When it comes to a body area network, the physical layer is your skin, period. Then 802.15.3 here, that is your skin with millimeter wave, which the military knows. They know that is for not your healthcare. Although your healthcare can use the same networks on different allocated spectrum by the Federal Communications Commission for that their point of care for the Internet of Medical Things. This is your new digital healthcare ecosystem. It's all using the same networks for different things. Because just like on the internet, when you, whoever you are, you're not always using the internet for the same things. Sometimes you're paying your bills. Sometimes you're playing a game. Sometimes you're watching a stream. Sometimes you're on a Zoom. Right. Those are different networks. works. The internet talks to itself using networks. So, intra-body communication for the nervous system with the Internet of Medical Things, which watches patches, bioelectronics, wearables, all those different mesh networks. Why? So that your neurons, neural signal transmission, so your neurons, your nervous system is protected. Your own nervous system with your own bioelectricity, and neurons are body-wide. They are not only in your brain. So that is what they are using. They are not using a wearable, a chip in your head. That is old, antiquated by the 80s. Okay. I know a lot of people don't understand this yet. They're kind of getting there because whether it's the intelligence community or our new healthcare 4.0 that CMS Medicare is going on and on about with the human physiolome. The cyber physical systems that are connected to our Department of Commerce. This is also in one of our PDFs. This is the National Institute of Standards and Technology with the Department of Commerce. Another pages.nist.gov. Okay. This is the cyber physical systems. When we tell you that your butt is connected to the cloud and that the Department now of War is watching body area networks with DHS, biological surveillance, not just bodies. They're watching the soil, the water, the air. They're watching everything that is comprised of molecules. So there's you, the human in a box. And on the right-hand side, you have manufacturing, transportation, logistics, self-driving cars, all these different types of visible light communication with funny-looking streetlights that aren't just streetlights. And there's your healthcare. And this is part of something called our Trillion Sensors program with high-powered computing. Those big data centers that they're not building, they've already been there, some of them. Some of them they are building, okay? But the ones that have already been there with our quantum technology with the same NIST. For more details on this, please see other videos, okay? Because we've been over this a lot, and there's other videos that fully break it on down and give you all the links you need so you can understand that your new healthcare has a physiolome. They have divided the human body systems into 11 systems for computer networking through the body. If they had not done this with Health Level 7 and your Cisco Yang module with remote procedure call, NFV-SDNP, then they could not offer you your new update with the Rural Transformation Healthcare Challenge that we're all talking about now, because people have found out, okay, Rural Health Transformation Program, yeah. People have now found out that this is a very real thing. What is your new healthcare where they're going to burn down the fax machine? They said, put your wearable on. And people said, well, at least I have a choice. No, you really don't. You just haven't found out yet. Here's how it really works. So what we do is we put in Healthcare 4.0. The new paradigm in healthcare that integrates technology like AI, the Internet of Things, and big data to create smart, interconnected, and personalized precision AI healthcare services. It represents the fourth industrial revolution in healthcare, aiming to improve efficiency, cost effectiveness, and quality of care by connecting physical and cyber systems, thus cyber physical, for real-time data-driven patient monitoring and treatment. Then you click on images. And I want you to grab this ResearchGate right here because it's going to tell you you have a body area communication network. Yeah, body area network. And that body area network is connected to that NIST cyber physical systems for your safety. Okay? Per them. Whether you agree with that sentiment or not, and if you haven't heard me before, y'all, then let me tell you clearly. These people have been under human skin doing this for 30 years, legally, wide open, with companies in biomedical engineering. The system is fully deployed. It does not rely on towers the way everybody thinks. It is driven by photonics, high-powered computing, and the National Science Foundation for 25 years of networks. Now, because people do not understand how the internet works, they hear a lot of different things, and if they're not, say it this way, if they are not from the information communication technology industry, they go off of what they hear and what other experts have told them, maybe their neighbors, maybe a family member, a friend, but they don't actually understand it because they're not in the industry. So how would they, right? Right? Okay. But the problem we have is that we have missing anatomy that everybody thinks is some woo-woo spiritual weirdness. Our bodies are electrical and magnetic, and those bioelectromagnetic measurements are being used for our biological signals. Bioelectromagnetics is the scientific study of the interaction between electromagnetic fields and biological systems. So what I found in my 3 years online is that the quote unquote truther community, being very confused by a lot of operations and whatever else, they didn't seem to be aware that these are deployed systems for healthcare and cognitive warfare. We have human body communication, for example, from Purdue University. Human body communication, a technology that uses the body as a medium for data transfer between devices. And that includes the miniaturized biosensors as much as it includes your Fitbit and your wearables. Human body communication does not use Kirlian photography. It uses intra-body communication, which is what you're looking at here. So people did not understand because they were always told there's no human biology involved. It's just radiation or towers. And I said, no, you're missing anatomy. You used to call it the aura. And they said, you're stupid. And I said, no, you're ill-informed. The human biofield was on our National Institute of Health in 1908. They took it away in 1910 with the Flexner Report and all the changes to Rockefeller medicine. Now in 2015, the biofield is back on the NIH, and human biology doesn't disappear and reappear magically. They did it for R&D, research and development, all through the Cold War. Dr. Becker's work with the IEEE buried, developed quietly, and now here we are with your new Healthcare 4.0. Everything else that everybody heard, myself included, in between Reptar, EMPCO, Black Nemesis, this, that, and all this crazy, none of it panned out. Couldn't prove a word of it. But is the body electrical? Yeah. Do we measure with electrophysiology, the branch of physiology that studies the electrical properties of biological cells and tissues for voltages? Yeah. Okay. We're talking about an EEG, an ECG, the MEG and MCG. And instead of having adult conversations, we're relegated up here to the argument crowd that wants to pretend like toddlers that the central nervous system is a choice. I can believe in my central nervous system or not. I can believe in my liver or not. These are human body internal systems. You don't get a choice to believe in your brain and your heart tissue. At least that's what I thought. Nope. So your biofield is part of your physiology with electrophysiology and the measurement, the scientific discipline of measurement for bioelectromagnetics. Biofield physiology is medical physiology, cell biology, and biophysics. And examples of clinically relevant biofields, plural, are the electrical and magnetic fields generated by heart cells and neurons. So you're electrical, you're magnetic, and you generate light. These biophoton emissions that have a lot to do with the pressure and the metabolism of your brain chemistry. And everybody's standing around pretending the central nervous system is mystical, spiritual, it's a choice. And I'm sitting here thinking, have you ever had a heart attack? I hope you haven't. But if you had, they came at you with pads, defibrillator. Yeah. And but electrophysiology is how they measure your electrocardiogram. Yeah. So those magnetic fields generated by your heart cells and neurons there on that electrocardiogram, that's one of a component of your biofield. And the biofields, plural, that are toroidal fields of the body. Oh my God, it's spiritual. And the noise would not stop. And I couldn't figure out why that people were walking around claiming that their body wasn't electrical. That made no sense to me. It's very dangerous, but they've been doing it for so long. I figured maybe that's what it was. Well, I don't know. But what I do know for 100% is that these machine learning algorithms that are made only for your body use bioelectromagnetics, real-time physiological signal acquisition based on your biosignals. Body area networks are inherently cyber-physical systems which interact with the human body by using that trillion sensors, high-powered computing to collect, process, and communicate health data. You don't need a wearable. You don't need a chip in your head. You're just walking around. That is non-contact human activity recognition radar. And they use it for assisted living, search and rescue, EMTs in the ambulance with the digital twin, Siemens Health and Ears. They're using it with your new healthcare. Now, if you're unaware that this is fully deployed, I understand. A lot of people, when I said this 3 years ago, they said there ain't no way. Nobody would do that. If they did it, they would tell us. They did not. So what we are doing today is we are returning to the FCC 10 years ago. We had just finished up listening to a physician speak, and this is the biosignal acquisition. That's why I walked you through it really briefly for people who don't know. This is your biology that they're using, because if they had to depend on you to carry your phone or put a wearable on, that would not be cyber secure, because you could just take the wearable off. These systems are fully deployed. They've been worked on at Rutgers University since 2010. For example, we have human augmentation to deal with as well. We're nowhere near that so far because people don't want to admit the heart is electrical, and they don't want to admit, and this is from 2018, that this is healthcare 4.0. Why? I don't know. But that is what it is, and this is how it works, HOW. It's also how your wearables work, your Fitbit or anything else. So to continue and waiting on ghost stories won't help. And I encourage folks to take heart. You're smarter than you realize. If it's good enough for Medicare and Medicaid, which they have to contend with malpractice insurance in general, curated databases for HIPAA and biomedical, nobody's LARPing here. The truther community did not tell the truth. They were busy selling bioelectronic medicine, which is exactly the system you're looking at. So they knew it was coming, and they knew there was nothing that could be done to stop it. So you ended up with the wellness company, patches, all these different systems, and everybody just said, oh, boogada, boogada, and, it's an evil convid virus, and they got to shoot everyone up. But then they screamed bioweapon. They didn't explain the biocyber interface, which is what our college students are working on. 2018, bacteria-based biosensors implanted in the human body for the CDC's integrated disease surveillance system. And instead, people were told the evil nanobots are invading, or none of this is real. Just sit there and wait on lawfare, politicians, it'll all go away. While our college students have been going to work for this is their job. Since 2003 with synthetic biology, and in 2017, they had a big upgrade. And instead of being able to communicate, college students to adults, etc., we've had a lot of problems just talking about the Internet of Bio-Nano things. So towards wearable sensing-based precise and rapid responding system. Whoa. Hey, mouse. Excuse me. Towards wearable sensing-based precise and rapid responding system for the early detection of the future pandemic. These are body area networks. They have COVID body area networks. And I'm going to leave this here because we're going to talk about it more. But this is an example of all the data that they're pulling with the digital twin systems, which have been around for 50 years at the Pentagon. See other videos for those details with IITSec. Break all that down for people too. And that's why we're in the position we're in. The Internet of Bio Nano Things comes out of nano.gov for 25 years. This system is heavily developed. That's why Medicare is good to go. That's why it's $50 billion to all the states and hospitals participating. But hospitals don't just turn around in a day and start doing this. So they have health level 7 standards that they have to follow. And then we have our fast healthcare interoperable record standards that they have to follow that all started in 2011. That's where the blockchain nerds screwed it up for everybody because they claimed everybody was decentralized. And I'm like, that means you're more enmeshed. They were misusing the term because it refers to network topology. So your fast healthcare interoperability resources here with health level 7. And what I did is I took people to the Wikipedia for FHIR and I said, check it out. This stuff doesn't just show up yesterday and it didn't show up in 2019. They started it in 2011 with first draft, second draft by 2015. And in 2019, they had their third draft. In 2019, they had release number 4 because they started with their initial draft back here with testing and deployment and test beds to make or create standards, test standards, make sure it's safe and worldwide deployable back in 2011 and 2014. So what we've been trying to explain to people is that the healthcare system is well aware because this is critical infrastructure. Nobody is LARPing. Nobody is pretending. Everybody knows that it's a body area network, except you. Why? I don't know. But that is what it is. And the millimeter wave over here that can be used with a phone, they point the phone at your body area network, FHIR. Now that changes the actuation for point of care or a biosensor or a network on the 802.15.5. How? This is why it is not a bioweapon. It is a biocyber interface. It could be communicating with the Internet of Bio Nano Things and RFID, the near field channel, the Bluetooth, the Zigbee, the body area network, optogenetics, redox, FRET. It could be an electronic tattoo or your transdermal patches. They're all here for your safety. At the cellular level, you know, MIT put the wearable on. Check it out at the cellular level. Same thing. Nano networks, 2015, fully standardized, no maybes, not an IEEE Explorer paper. There's a difference. When it says SA, that is the Standards Association. That means they've already deployed, testbed, and standardized the criteria. This is an update. As you see here, it says 1906.1 2020 Standard Data Model for Nanoscale Communication Systems. Started in 2015 with remote configuration and management. Yes, because in our national archives, the Federal Communications Commission standardized medical body area networks in 2014. Okay. So the hospitals and critical infrastructure were working on fast health interoperable records in 2011. In 2012, the IEEE spectrum gives medical body area networks a clean bill of health. June 2012. Electronic health monitoring took a big step forward last week in 2012 when the United States Federal Communications Commission approved spectrum for those medical body area networks. The final rule, 47, was put into the National Archives Federal Register in 2014. How do we know for sure? Federal Register, the Daily Journal of the United States Government, October 6th, 2014. What's it say? medical body area network. In other words, nobody is walking around willy-nilly firing signals on people. PhysioNet with Health and Human Services is responsible for that biosignal acquisition. Biosurveillance with DHS through multiple different divisions is responsible for the biocyber interface. Why? So that you don't end up with a denial of service attack on an internal organ. Oh, Sabrina, that's entirely why they're doing it this way. That's why you have a physioloam. Mental health, nervous system, gastrointestinal, skin, coagulation, metabolic, musculoskeletal, respiratory, cardiovascular, and all of these teeny tiny networks in the body are delineated with the nanometrology measurement and the nano networks that are intra-body communication 1906.1. You might have heard of it in the following way. Several of us on the channel tried to talk about the corona routing system. We're like, yo, they're routing data through the body on these teeny tiny little biosensor networks. And they said, nope, it's Reptar. And we're like, it's got a frequency and a signal to noise. Hello, they're doing this. It's all in the packets. This is math. What are we doing here? A joint coordinate and routing system, Corona, which can be deployed dynamically on a 2D ad hoc 1906.1 nano network and operates efficiently, yielding a very low packet retransmission, very important in computer networking for quality of service, which is very important for precision healthcare, and packet loss rate, etc. September 2015, same year as the Standards Association put it out there. That makes total sense. If you're from the information communication technology community, because then you know that, oh, wrong one, hang on. Molecular communication, molecule to molecule computer networking is from 2014. You know from nano.gov timeline, Richard Feynman's talk about nanotechnology is in 1959. You've already been here to the IEEE looking at molecular communication as an emerging communication paradigm for bio-nano machines, the Internet of Bio-Nano Things, artificial cells, genetically engineered cells, and all of this fully deployed with professionals worldwide in 2014. That's 5 years before your precious bioweapon ridiculous garbage telling everybody to get in line, put a mask on, do what you're told. And don't forget that your Internet of Medical Things is also called the Internet of Virus Things, because that Internet of Medical Things, logging in under the skin with your biocyber interface to protect your liver, is exactly how they're getting in and out to change the cells, actuating a change at something called the point of care with the wetware. All these systems, whether for good or for ill, work the same way. Your body area network is connected, and somebody is either going to get in or they're not, depending on your environment, the other bodies you're around, how well you've taken care of your own home in regards to your diet, exercise, checking for a band shell effect in your house. They use the power lines. They can use your actual on the side of your house meter. We're going to go over that probably tomorrow in detail. They have multiple ways to access your bioelectricity, your biomagnetism, your biophotons, visible light communication. And this is what they've been doing for 25 years with the National Science Foundation, which is why CMS Medicare is not LARPing. Nobody's afraid. Nobody's walking around going, my heart's made of cheddar. These are jobs that have been done with companies. Wide open, no NDAs. It's all right here. If you knew the right terminology, then you could find it. If you didn't, and you were told MK Ultra, voice to skull, and all that other scaremongering stuff that never had an answer except endless lawfare and, individual experiences and maybes and all that, then that's why we ended up where we are. So 2 things. 1, it's your healthcare. 2, it is also a warfare doctrine. Here we are. So you've got your microarrays with your biosensors or point of care. Don't forget organ on a chip and microfluidics, isn't it great? And it's open source software that can be used with your genomics. Your genome is part of our massive Department of Energy systems, which are watching every molecule there is using omics. Ain't new. It's what they've been up to. High-powered computing, trillion sensors network. So we are not waiting on tanks and planes. Melania just issued to the Marine Corps, you're going to be unmanned teaming for next generation air dominance. Yeah. 5 years of the Pentagon convergence. Yeah. Okay. Now, the way that we know it here on the channel is the IITSEC super soldier information from the Air Force Research Laboratory that we went over. So your different omics accessed in the database, plugged into whatever software they're using for logging into your intra-body communication. That's your neurons. And that is what cognitive warfare actually is. So this is why when they talk about psyops, and they never shut up about that, they also never disclose to you that intra-body communication started in 1996. Excuse me. There is a delineation between neuroscience and neuromodulation and bullshitting people to death. There is a difference. I'm sorry. Chapter 6 is all about cognitive neuroscience technologies for defense against cognitive warfare. And I think, hang on. Yeah, chapter 5 is what you're used to. Well, I'll talk you to death, manipulate you with what I say and how I move my head and all that kind of stuff. Okay? And if I sound trite, it's because to me, there's a huge difference between talking someone or at them or, trying to convince people and actually logging in under their skin. So you can also find that link here on the Synergy channel. Cognitive warfare has been spoken of by Giordano several times. It's what these guys are discussing here. Before we get to our essay. Okay, good. So what you can do, and this just came up the other day, we've been to the HDIAC with the Pentagon for it was a casualty care. And this one here, the HDIAC webinar on nanotechnology and combat casualty care, state-of-the-art and emerging trends from 3 years ago. And in the beginning, you'll hear them announce who they are with the DoD and how they teach everybody. And then you can go through this video to see all the different types of reasons they want to use nanotechnology with synthetic artificial cells and nano-encapsulated human blood bioengineering. They'll tell you it's the wild, wild west. Then they go through the different types of nanomaterials that they've been testing and using and deploying 3 years ago. Then they'll go over biosciences, Texas A&M, NanoDX. Then they'll talk about biosensors, and they'll explain Prof USA, pioneering tissue integrating biosensors for continuous monitoring of body chemistry and smart garments. So that's one way you can learn about the nanotechnology in use. And it's like I said, they've been busy developing this stuff for 25 years. And oh boy, what were you called? Somebody just sent it in. Yeah. So then you can go here 5 years ago, Weaponizing Brain Science, Neural Weapons, part 1 of 2. Or you can do this one, Neurocognitive Enhancement, part 1 with Dr. Giordano.
This podcast is part 1 of 2 on neurocognitive enhancement. The Neurocognitive Enhancement podcasts are part of a broader series on neuroscience and national security, which can be found on the HDIAC website. Hello, and welcome to the Homeland Defense and Security Information Analysis Center HDIAC podcast. The HDIAC is one of 3 Defense Technical Information Center Basic Center of Operations. These centers cover a wide variety of technical areas that are of importance to the Department of Defense. They provide users with focused, expert technical consulting and unbiased scientific and technical information through in-depth analysis and product creation. My name is Mara Kiernan, and I'm the lead analyst at the HDIAC. This podcast is the first in a multi-part series on the intersection of neuroscience and national security. Today's podcast will focus on neurocognitive enhancement and the warfighter. And to talk about this topic, I'm excited to have with me today Dr. James Giordano. Dr. Giordano is a professor in the Departments of Neurology and Biochemistry, chief of the Neuroethics Studies Program, and co-director of the O'Neill Pellegrino Program in Brain Science and Global Law and Policy at Georgetown University Medical Center. He is a research fellow in biosecurity, technology, and ethics at the U.S. Naval War College, an appointed member of DARPA's Neuroethics Legal and Social Issues Advisory Panel, senior advisory fellow of the Defense Operational Cognitive Sciences Section, Strategic Multilayer Assessment Group, Joint Staff to Pentagon, and a consulting bioethicist for the Defense Medical Ethics Committee. He's previously served as a Donovan Fellow for Biowarfare and Biodefense at U.S. Special Operations Command and as an appointed member of the Department of Health and Human Services, Secretary's Advisory Committee on Human Research Protection. So, Dr. Giordano, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
To kick things off, neuroscience is a broad field. To get us started, how would you categorize the applications of neuroscience to military endeavors generally?
It is a broad field, and it's also a field that's continually engaging what's known as advanced integrative scientific convergence. So it's not just engaging the classical life and natural sciences, but also the physical sciences and increasingly the social sciences, and then the humanities as well, looking at those ways that we can use the brain sciences to understand not only human interaction, but interaction with our ecologies, and of course what that may mean for larger issues that were certainly the focus of the humanities, philosophy, ethics, even theological and spiritual issues. So
most people have seen Dr. Giordano before, but in case you haven't, this one and part 2 are very good. They are 5 years old. That's why, in my opinion, the truther community has had plenty of time to talk about this for what it is. But this year, between the White House with Healthcare 4.0, Put Your Wearable On, and the Rural Transformation Act, people finally admitted this is in our hospitals. It is rapidly being deployed everywhere, much faster than they thought. And you can't blame people for that because all of us are used to a certain pattern of deployment that has accelerated with AI, which is why you are smart enough, no matter who you are, to understand that your body is electrical and that is the system they are exploiting. And see other videos, I lay all of it out with the electrome and the biophysiology and all the rest of it. Now, this discussion, Council on Foreign Relations 9 days ago, is about AI, espionage, and influence. And I have been a huge advocate to tell the truth about our cognitive warfare, as well as our biometric influencer peddling with the stupid Q that they've been using to log into humans with the help of influencers to watch how people react to information in real time. This is with something called Odin with IARPA. Now, you've heard of DARPA, but IARPA is the DARPA for the intelligence community. This is also old, like 2017, working with the GitHub nerds and the DEF CON. And then they handed out apps on the phone, to influencers to log right in to something called a raw data cube, which is how we watch digital twins, neural networks, AI agents, and that body area network data with software. So instead of telling people that, and a few did, there's been some complaining on and off, but nobody wanted to admit they were logging into bodies. So they're still telling Q stories like sitting at the campfire. Meanwhile, these are biometrics for very serious things like your Department of Homeland Security. And this is from 2022, updated in 2025. the DHS massive biometrics database that can run, it's a $6 billion data set that they've been updating with the Homeland Advanced Recognition Technology System. This is even out, I mean, it's not outdated, but it works in tandem with other even better ontology systems now. Like I said, this was from 2022, updated in 2025, and it shares invasive data on over 270 million people, including juveniles. That number projected to grow, and this data will come from all those federal agencies that are already using these systems for 30 years. Powered by military-grade technologies to aggregate and compare biometrics with all these data sets, DNA, iris scans, fingerprints, voice prints, stochastic things like what you clicked on, where you live, geospatial. It's all talking together. They always make it sound, I've noticed, oh, it's separate. It's this company and that company. And I'm like, the internet doesn't work that way. What are you guys doing? So IARPA's Odin project back in the day with your Keybase influencer app people, they just didn't tell anybody what they were doing. And when you hear Flynn Network, that refers to embedded clearances, which is something they use in order to protect, hang on, the country. Okay. So you want the Irregular Warfare Directorate. Then you want to go to divisions. And there's subgroups. You come down here to surveillance, collection, and operations support. You're going to be in the cyber and convergence technologies. That's part of command and control with Cyber Command. You're going to be special communications and signature management, identity intelligence, and media exploitation. And don't forget your technical collection. I think it's Executive Order, what is it, 19333 or no. What are you? Can never remember that one properly. Hang on. So 15333. No. Hang on. I want to find that quick. Here, let me let you guys watch a little bit more of this guy, these two discussing like I was intending. I'm going to pull up that paper and that executive order so you can see exactly what I'm referring to. Raw data is different than actually having access to people. It's how the NSA and others that oversee with the ODNI and the OUSS people, who gets to look at what with from your U.S. Marshals to law enforcement to the intelligence community. There's 17 agencies plus your main branches of the military, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me a moment.
Efforts. Much of what I've read about AI suggests that there's really no comparison to what countries can do today versus what the Russians did 8 years ago. Technology has advanced so much with deep fakes and the ability to identify micro targets. Sort of talk to me a little bit about that changing technology and changing scene.
Yeah, sure. I think there's kind of three big trends that are really shaping the landscape and making this work much, much more complicated. The first is just like a growing number of more diverse actors who are interested in conducting this kind of activity.
So who's the new universe of actors?
A wide variety of countries and also, non-state actors. Importantly, these commercial firms, I would say that's kind of the second big trend is that the rise of commercial firms influenced for hire. And the reason that is consequential is because it makes attribution much harder. And when you're talking about the work of intelligence professionals, that work really starts and ends with attribution to a foreign actor. That's how, you distinguish between the constitutionally protected speech of American citizens and a national security challenge, something we're supposed to be protecting and something we're supposed to be mitigating. And I would say these trends overlap because the third trend is like the rise of these technologies. We think a lot about generative AI and LLMs, but it's also just big data analytics and other, related tools, which are enabling the commercial firms to do the work. They're further, complicating attribution. And so it's making it harder, to detect these operations and to figure out who's behind them. And then I think the public conversation is, highly indexed on the threat of deep fakes, and I think those are real.
Okay, and deep fakes are when you can create a video of somebody doing something, but that's not them.
Yeah, synthetic video, but also audio, for example. So I think this kind of dominates the public mind, but I am at least as worried about the prospect that China, which has historically been really ham-handed in its influence operations, I mean, just not great at this, that if they can get better, they can use sentiment analysis to.
Well, what is sentiment analysis?
They can basically use big data analytics to identify trends in public opinion.
Yep, and so can we. And that has to do with the ontology, semantic AI, and agent to agent as well. So Executive Order 12333 signals intelligence, availability procedures. This is where they can pull raw data. This is your signals intelligence, so it's just signals, raw data, pass it around to whatever division they want. And what she just said there about how many people are working in these jobs, it's called the signature reduction force. Easiest way I can show it to people so far has been the 2021 Newsweek article, the largest undercover force the Pentagon has ever known for 10 years, so since 2011. And I tried to point out to people that these are your intelligence analyst jobs, watching all these databases and people. Jobs and signature reduction involve protecting operational security, OPSEC, NatSec, FOREL, and MISO, Military Information Support Operations, is a division of psychological operations. So they can log into your neurons, they can do different things around you with your computers or whatever. But one thing is for certain, you're never going to know because it's a need to know situation with clandestine clearances. They don't have to tell you. So you have protecting operational security by minimizing and masking signatures, identifying information of individuals, teams, assets for government and military. These roles are found in fields like counterintelligence, cybersecurity, and your IA people. They even have their own special divisions. And then you can scroll down and go find some jobs. You got a clearance? Okay. What kind is it? Where does it apply? Who have you been working with? What vendors? What companies? Booz Allen, they're not the only game in town. Yeah, NatSec at work. So this is part of what I've explained to people to try to help them understand what happened with the stupid Q, in that people knew better. They knew what this was. As influencers, did it anyways because they were told to. And that's part of IARPA's projects back then. Allegedly, because I don't know for sure, can't tell you, a bunch of infighting went on. I don't know. But the Q movement was never something that was supposed to be used the way it has been. You got a lot of people out there that they don't know what this is. They don't understand how this data is transferred. They know nothing about OPSEC. They're just going off of what their man friends told them, military people told them, and then they're doing podcasts. And that wouldn't be a bad thing. But the problem is over here. You're dealing with very real signature management in these operations that are equally real. And instead of being able to talk about that, we end up with a bunch of Q influencers confusing the shit out of people while they're sitting around waiting for, I don't know. Those of us in the real world, we're trying to help get you educated on how Space Force is actually doing what they do. And that would be in reality your PAVE, pause, phased array systems. I'll leave this here for those of you that don't know anything about it, but that phone I showed you back in 2018 where they can point the phone at you and access your intra-body area network, that's part of these same systems. So that's why, excuse me a moment, over here, back to our video. Trying to make sure that my tabs are actually in order over here. So that is why. Are we ready? AI Espionage and Influence with Jessica Brandt 9 days ago, a senior fellow for technology and national security at the Council on Foreign Relations, sits down with James Lindsay to discuss how AI is reshaping cyber operations, influence campaigns and intelligence gathering. And you'll pick up on the fact that they know other countries are already using all this technology, and the American public is way behind education-wise. We don't want to be doing that. We want to get as caught up as we possibly can on the healthcare system as much as the choices we do or do not have in this cognitive warfare environment. So now, y'all remember surfacing a hydra. We'll come back to all of that. We're going to go ahead and get back into the Federal Communications Commission 10 years ago. We're going to get in our little time machine, and we're going to go listen to these people discuss your current, now fully deployed healthcare system. No fear. Everybody equal. Everybody here to learn. And hopefully when you hear this many professionals and how calm they are, you'll begin to understand that what we've described here on the channel, these are the life sciences and the material sciences in a multimodal upgrade for the biodigital convergence. It has already happened. The tower is you. Your body is the physical layer of the network. That would be you. So tearing down towers is not going to help you. And the biosignals come out of you and are read by the digital twin system. It's all around you, air, Wi-Fi, whatever it may be. So the signal comes out of you first. Step one, get re-attenuated with your neuroscience, cognitive, neurology, biology, the human biofield. That's number one. Somatoform on the top of your head, homunculus, where you're feeling things, okay? Number two, you want to ensure situational awareness in your environment physically. Number three, start learning what is applicable for your environment, your health, and your situation. Okay? All right. So welcome back, everybody. Here we go.
Seriously, we have medically focused.
Sorry about that.
Figured out how to get people to do stuff. Like, Jaron, back to you for a second. So, you do all this marathon running. You post your runs on Facebook or Strava. What do? You share that stuff. You don't? No. Who does? Someone must share their exercise. What do you do? Do you like exercising? No, you don't. Right? No one really likes to exercise. What I bet you like is sort of the moral superiority you feel of your friends as you're on that. Am I right? I mean, it's the same feeling I get when I beat my dog. I mean, like on the leaderboard thing, I don't hit the dog at all, right? And so again, lots of other areas figured out there are other aspects that allow us to motivate. So that, there are ways that other industries have been very effective at motivating people to make better choices. And, we can have doctors make better choices. We can have pharma make better choices. We can have technology companies make better choices, all because they're aligned and the patients can be brought along at the same time. One last question, if there's a question. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you so much, Harry. We really appreciate that. I'm intrigued by this notion that what we're really talking about today is transitioning to a trust model. And so I'm going to invite the third session up to the dais here. And, we had a title, Identifying and Prioritizing Key Features, Functions, and Gaps in Wireless Medical Device Testbeds. But I'm so intrigued by the Flintstone metaphor that Harry used. I'm thinking I'm going to retitle it Yabba Dabba Doo Time. Seriously, we have two folks here who are going to be moderating this panel for us. I just want to take a second to tell you a bit about them. Ed Cantwell is the Chief Operating Officer of the Center for Medical Interoperability, and he's taken on this challenge of moving us from where we are now to where we want to be, what the steps should be, what the features and should be. Where are the gaps? We've been talking about that a little bit already today, but we're going to flesh that out. And he is joined as a co-moderator by Ira Keltz, who is the Deputy Chief of the Office of Engineering and Technology here at the FCC. So Ed and Ira, the time is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. So, well, good afternoon, and it's tough to follow the last act, but we will try to entertain you over the next hour and a quarter. So I'm Ira Keltz with the Office of Engineering and Technology, and here to hold what I hope will be a very interesting discussion, looking at the identifying, prioritizing the key features and gaps in medical device test beds. So I think recapping and trying to key off of what we heard this morning, I think there were a couple of key messages that we heard. One is it's very complex and people using lots of devices. And if throw up the first slide, is there a clicker to do that? Or? Oh. So this is kind of, everybody wants to use their own device all the time, kind of like this guy here, and it causes you all kinds of problems. Great, thank you. So we've kind of heard that, this might be a slightly different context, but that's kind of what I was hearing this morning. And then the second thing is we've got devices that want to be all things to all people, and you want them to work all the time, and becomes very complex. So, with that in mind, what I'm hoping that we can do here is take what we heard this morning and these problems and the complexity of it and try to boil that down to some actual action items, some things that we can actually do, and how do we get started on solving the issue of breaking down that complexity, and what that actually is. I'm not sure if it's that we actually have a national test bed. Do we end up with a bunch of test procedures so we could take a bunch of different devices and know how to test them against what to ensure compatibility and coexistence and so on and so forth. So that's kind of what I'm going to throw out to the panel here as we go through. Let's see if we can actually get to making some recommendations and coming up with some ideas to move this forward out of the realm of just discussion of this is really difficult to how do we get there. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator, Ed Cantwell, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the Center for Medical Interoperability.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I think our intent with this panel is to start to transition to talking about solutions versus the problem. So we're really fortunate to have such a great panel that represents hospitals, IT vendors, medical device vendors, and technology companies. So with that, let the panel introduce themselves. And if you'll bring up the slides.
Hi, I'm Steve Baker from Welch Allen. I'm Ed Wyatt with Ruckus Wireless.
I'm Rick Hampton. I'm Partners Healthcare.
Annie Mlinarski, Octoscope.
Chris Ria from Carillion Clinic.
Hi, thanks. And Rick, can you start us off?
Yeah. So if you can bring the slides back up again, sorry about that. So basically I work in a hospital. This is the typical header information. Don't need to worry about that. This is a slide that I showed to some folks at FCC. Actually, I think Julie was amongst the first to see this about 10, 15 years ago. Even though, a lot of the discussion so far has been around Wi-Fi and that type of stuff, this is a list of all the FCC services that hospitals use. This is certainly in mine. And you'll notice there's everything there except broadcast. We don't have an AM television, or we don't have an AM radio station, FM radio station, or TV, but we pretty much got everything else that we use.
All right. Again, my name is Sabrina Wallace. This is the Synergy Channel. Services utilized in your hospital: RFID, spread spectrum, ultra wideband, medical telemetry. Let's go to the left. Industrial, scientific, and medical, wireless medical telemetry service, biomedical telemetry, med radio mix, medical implant communication service. And over on the right, again, in red, medical body area network. Remember, we're in our time machine. This is 10 years ago. It's a way here on the channel that I have consistently, hang on. Okay, I got you both over there. Yeah, machine learning for mHealth. Here on the channel, I have consistently used this blog, even though I don't normally show blogs, because in October 2018, I felt that this blog laid it out very clear. So wireless body area network, those go back to 1971, developed forward body sensor networks and all the rest, until in 1999, you have your medical implant communication system. Additionally, we provide the direct link to the FCC for those of you curious about the medical device radio communications service, the medical body area networks, the rule in the National Register, and that the medical implant communication service, along with Med Radio, dates back to 1999 when the FCC established the mix. And at that time, the Federal Communications Commission set aside 3 megahertz of spectrum at 402 to 405 megahertz for medical implant devices like your pacemakers. But then, as all technology does, they upgraded. Okay. And the notice of their proposed rulemaking and all that stuff is right here, to where you see in 2012, they released their first report and order modifying Med Radio to enable the deployment of the medical body area network devices. Modified again, and then the final rule in 2014. And then in 2015, your Enterprise Wireless Alliance gets involved. Okay. Now, here on the channel, bingo card paper or bingo card blog, you have the industrial, scientific, and medical and ultra wide bands listed here for your 2.4 gigahertz band. So your body area network and your smart fridge can communicate. No, I am not being hyperbolic. It's the Internet of Things. The 3 standard physical layers, the narrow band being optional, the ultra wide band is mandatory, and that their human body communication is also mandatory for your biomedical safety. These systems are for interoperability in hospitals as much as the wearables, as much as your mHealth, eHealth, and telehealth. This is the same paper we've been going over for 3 years, but I wanted to remind folks who've been here before, it's the same thing that you are now seeing 10 years ago in our time machine that they are discussing here at the FCC with the FDA and everybody else. It is what it is, and that's part of the engineering to get to their biocyber interface injections, because it's not a vaccine if it requires graphene or other metamaterials. The Internet of Medical Things is also called the Internet of Virus Things because they log in and out of the body at the molecular level with the digital twin. I'll show that really quick and then we'll go back to our video. Using the same network physiolome for the connectivity, but when it comes to the vendors, your physician, the hospitals, and what interoperability they're using, that will change based on, proprietary software. So you have the body level, the organ level, the tissue level, the cellular level, and the molecular level. This is why every molecule is accounted for. And the digital twins, as I mentioned, 50 years worth of data sets with our Department of War and our Department of Energy. Okay, it's good to know that we're right on track. Here we go.
In our hospitals. And in the, since it's used to take care of, or run our operations, it is used somehow in patient care. So these are all the different types of wireless systems. Just so you know, wireless systems really aren't wireless. There's a lot of infrastructure in the back. So when I brought up the issue earlier about, how do we deal with the systems? We've talked a lot about coexistence and interference. But a lot of my problems are in the back end. And so when people think about their smartphones and their Fitbits and that stuff, that's great. I have to worry about making all this stuff in the background work. The bottom line for me when you talk about wireless test beds is the number one for creating these, test beds is to ensure the safety and health of the patient. Anyone can create an app. Anyone can sell an app on an iPhone. But making it safe is what really requires the testing and the insurance of these test beds. And so my first challenge to the folks from the FCC and the FDA is, you talk about these, medical grade systems. I need someone to define for us what it means to have a wireless medical grade infrastructure system or whatever. Once we know what we're trying to do, what is the scope or what is the reason for this, then I think we can get to the test beds. A couple of other things that I put down here. I think these slides will be available later, but here are some other hot points. The only one I want to touch on now is I'm going to kind of poke Ira and the folks from the FCC, because back in 2012 when they started all this, one of the things that I heard was going to go with the wireless test beds was an expedited system for experimental licensing. That's going to be important for future systems. And I got to be honest with you, I've worked with some researchers lately where not being able to get experimental licensing stuff cleared through the FCC has been a real hindrance to some of the new stuff. So with that, let's go on to whoever. Pardon? Fanny?
Hi, thank you. I was going to have some slides as well, but maybe I can get started. Essentially, we have a mission critical application. Some of the wireless apps are more mission critical than others. We really have an analogy is a very large intersection with a lot of traffic without a traffic light. We have, especially in the unlicensed bands, a lot of technologies trying to operate, and there's no regulation of how they access the airwaves. So the question that I think we should ask is, like a lot of speakers before me have asked, is what is critical? What is the framework? What is the back end? What is the end mission of the application? And then define the test bed that's appropriate to qualify either a device or a system of devices to that standard. I know the font is very low and that everybody's just had lunch, so I'm not going to put anybody to sleep here, and I'm not going to read any of this stuff. Basically, this table gives you some of the test standards in the industry, just as examples. By far, the most testing is done in the cellular industry, and that's because mobile operators own the headache of support. They have to support people with the phones who will not pay their bills unless their phone works. And so there's a long pile of standards, there's automation, there's a lot of testing being done before that phone makes it to the airways, before the carrier allows it on their network. And that's by far the most structured industry as far as testing goes. Wi-Fi is far behind that, even though there is Wi-Fi Alliance. Essentially, Wi-Fi Alliance is run by vendors who want to get a stamp. The stamp means they interoperate with other vendors. A lot of folks here said, well, okay, you passed the Wi-Fi Alliance test, my devices still don't interoperate. And that's the nature of the beast. So the question is, we have to ask the right questions, and what's the purpose, and how do we design the standard? The Wi-Fi Alliance has had a huge influence in making Wi-Fi a success. It basically picks probably maybe a tenth of what the IEEE 802.11 produces and makes it real, makes it into a product, because they create a certification standard and they select which of the technology gets certified and gets out to the market. And recently they have even started defining standards that have not been defined by the IEEE, such as direct Wi-Fi. Another standard that's worth mentioning is the IEEE standard for performance, testing performance of wireless devices, a committee that I started and was active in for a while. We have a number of medically focused standards which deal with both access, wireless access, wired access, interoperability, and how the devices communicate with one another, how did they come out of the box and play together. These are just some examples. You can use these slides for reference. Obviously, there's a lot of information here. The main point is all of these protocols and applications and operation, they rely on the physical layer. They have to work over wireless. And yes, some critical monitors will be hooked up via Ethernet, but the nature of sensors, if I want to check my child's glucose, it's mobile, it's wireless. Glucose usually gets checked once a day, not critical. I can use it like a text message, it's okay. Some other sensors are more critical to get through, so there's a lot we need to sort through and define what's important, what's not. How do we certify these devices? Already we mentioned most of the trouble is in the unlicensed bands. This is just a slide that shows unlicensed bands. There are many issues with the unlicensed bands. Because of what I mentioned earlier, there's no traffic light, essentially. Wi-Fi is a very friendly system in that it's listen before talk. So it's sort of like an orderly speaker in a room where they will yield to others when they're speaking, and there's an orderly protocol called contention-based access to get on the airwaves. But other devices don't behave that way. They will jump in and transmit, and they don't listen to anybody else. And so how do you, without a traffic light, manage that? No matter how much you're going to test it, you have a problem at the protocol level, not in the test bed. So there have been some efforts. This is one example of GE initiating some of the licensed bands just below the 2.4 ISM unlicensed band where maybe chipsets could operate. Not sure whether any chipset actually do that, but today we don't have a licensed band. So to finish off is basically, yes, we need the test beds. Yes, we have a lot of questions before we build the test beds. My company happens to build wireless test beds that are controlled environment test beds. And so we hope to be able to contribute. Thank you very much.
Okay, got a question on the X, excuse me, about the somatoform, your parietal lobe. And as it turns out, because some people had some questions on the updates that the FCC is going to be putting forward this year. Where did I put you? Skull photoacoustic imaging. Skull. No, not you two. Skull surface microscopy, and I was looking for the different either sat bands or where they're sticking it. So what people don't understand is the visuals, meaning that you're using Wi-Fi, you could be using intelligent reflective surfaces, you could be using non-contact radar, whatever it might be. You often hear me refer to somatoform, not disorder. Well, they always want to go to disorders, but this is your homunculus. Hang on. Because it has to do with how you feel your body. Let's give you that one instead, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Most people know the homunculus in the brain as the nervous system's way of making your hands more sensitive, your tongue, areas of the body. And that is in cybersecurity and the skull microscopy and the different ways with the radar and all the rest of it. The parietal lobe of the brain in the back of the head here. See where the color is? Let me get a better image for you. This is the parietal lobe right here in blue. Okay. And the signals that are coming down, because think your eyeballs are here, right? Hits the back of your head right here by the parietal lobe. And that's consistent with teledyne and heterodyning, which is a way that they process the signals when they hit the skull with the microscopy. So to Wesson, who wanted to know, what was the top of the head thing you mentioned? The parietal lobe aiming for heterodyning a signal. a signal processing technique that combines two frequencies to create a new frequency. For example, to shift an inaudible frequency into the human hearing range, or to move a radio signal to an intermediate frequency for easier processing. So when they're heterodyning, they are very much focused on that parietal lobe area. It's just angle and the different ways that they take that skull microscopy. That's why I was poking around at where in the different spectrum allocation with our Internet of Space things, free space optical, were the most common areas of the head, that they are hitting with the heterodyning. And it's always back here near the parietal lobe. So Wesson, I hope that answers your question. Back to our video for the next section, 10 years ago.
All right, thanks. Chris?
Hi. I've got a list of slides. They're out in the handout. I'm not going to bore you guys with them, but the bottom line is I've got a similar responsibility to Sean at Kaiser, Rick at Geisinger, and then Rick at Partners in the maintenance and the support of the medical systems and the medical devices. The only difference is we're a little bit more drought resistant than our friends in California, a little bit more snow depleted than our friends in the Northeast. And what I'd bring to the table is the rural hospital facility. We've got 2 critical access hospitals. Same challenges. I'm going to say limited resources, as we all have. But one of the things I want to talk about right now is we've heard a number of the earlier panels, and as Fanny just mentioned, I think we're all proponents of the wireless test bed system. One of the things that we all need to be aware of, and I think we are acutely aware of, particularly after the last panel right before lunch, is that the test beds will provide us the opportunity, provide the vendors the opportunity, and the consumers that if I put this system in my system of systems, it shouldn't break anything. It may not work within my system, but it shouldn't break anything. That amount of assurance is very valuable to us as consumers, but we still have the onus within our organizations to see how it's going to operate in our environment. There's not a silver bullet. It's not going to be a plug and play. It's going to be hopefully a plug and don't break. So I want to just preface my comments with that.
Great, thanks. Steve?
Hi, Steve Baker. So my thought on the test beds is, going back to what Steve Berger said, is it a protocol or is it a lab? Well, both. So you start with what Rick said. What do we need to test? Develop the protocol, and then we can develop the test beds tested. Otherwise, what Fanny's doing, great testing. What's being done at the University of Oklahoma, great testing, but it's all disparate testing. UNH Interoperability Lab does some sort of Wi-Fi-like testing, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but it's all separate. We don't have a good protocol. What I propose is that you have kind of a layered protocol. You do, just like integration testing, you do single unit testing, one device, one access point, many devices, one access point, many devices, many access points, start adding noise. Oh, you now start adding non-Wi-Fi devices in the same band, right? So you build this up, and hospitals could then point and say, well, I want something for a life critical application. It's got to pass at level 7 before I'm even going to consider it. Well, now all of a sudden, there's an incentive to the medical device manufacturer to start doing that. Because right now, honestly, my marketing people say, I don't hear a request from hospitals that they're going to preferentially buy our equipment, or conversely, they're not going to buy our equipment if we don't do this testing. The robust testing we do is invisible. So basically, until there's a pull from the customer, the hospitals, that my marketing and sales guys hear, it's hard for me to convince the company that we should do more robust testing to beware of the freight train that's coming. Another thing that I like to see, and this goes back to some of the stuff that Julian has harped on for years and years, it's data. So if there's an event that's not a life event, but just a mistake with maybe a configuration at Partners Hospital, but there was no adverse patient event, is it reportable? Nope. So we don't know what the performance is of the Welch Allyn devices at Partners compared to the Philips devices compared to the GE devices. I know for all Welch Allyn hospitals which hospitals have the best performance and which ones don't, but that's not public knowledge, right? For them to have a really cool system, Wouldn't it be nice if he could do his simulations and then go test that in the hospital and bring the data back and look at the results and then compare it to a whole bunch of hospitals? So we have a full closed loop system. Now that's a long way out, but if we don't provide a way that medical device manufacturers and hospitals are allowed to provide data in a way that won't result in lawsuits, then it's going to be hard for us to be able to confirm that the test beds are doing what we want. Thanks.
Ed?
As a AP manufacturer, we do tests like it's been said before. We test a great deal, but we found a couple of years ago that the way we test and how we test may not be realistic. The Tom's Hardware did a test several years ago that they did the first kind of test of capacity, and it was not done with simulator. It was done with actual hardware, meaning laptops and tablets and things like that. And some very unique things occurred. During one of the tests, when they had 50 laptops, they introduced 10 iPads. When they did that, all the traffic from one vendor went to the iPads and starved the laptops. Now, you would never see that if you're doing a traditional one-to-one test, and you would never see that if you're using a simulator. So the testing that we do is done with real devices, is done with different types of devices, tablets, phones, laptops, things like.
Again, to the people who are asking real engineering questions throughout my time online, as you heard the man say, we need to be mindful our companies are not being sued. And then we move right into a senior systems engineer who explains we're not just using simulators and software. We have to use real equipment and see what's going on. And you also heard them mention they have to have a way to report what is happening in the event that a patient is harmed, the signal is wrong. This is 10 years ago, okay? I keep saying that because I'm hopeful that the folks that have been terrified or terrorized, I hope you can take a breath and understand that these systems of deployment, the reason the FDA waived your right to consent is because they've been doing it for this long and they know what they're looking at, which is why I'm trying to provide a baseline of education so that people can recognize the change in both the healthcare system and the network-centric warfare in our nation, the United States, because I promise you, this is not going away. This is what they are doing. It is not being built, although there are always additional redundancy networks, upgrades, etc. This system is fully deployed. And that goes with our 3009 as well.
Like that to do it just to see how the devices are going to behave, because every manufacturer is going to put their own spin on their drivers. So that also needs to be thought of when you're talking about this.
Thanks.
Well, thank you. For the record, does the U.S. have a national test bed for wireless health? Anybody that thinks so, raise their hand. Okay, so let's start with that as the premise. Whose responsibility is it to build it? Governments, industries, vendors? So think about that question as we have the dialogue. To start on the questions, and there were some excellent questions provided to the panel, and I'll start with the first one. What does the test bed look like? And when I say look like, not theoretically, how big does the building need to be? How many people need to be employed? Let's start with Chris. Chris, if you have an expectation from Carillion that you're looking at a new device, then what do you envision that this test bed looks like?
I'm looking for a seal of approval that will handle all of the approved protocols as far as like physical and it's almost like a CE stamp of approval. so that I know that if I'm buying this device or my organization's purchasing this device, theoretically, and I use the word theoretically in quotes, it should work in a healthcare environment. To give you a real life case study, I get a lot of requests. Our department gets a lot of requests for, oh, I got this new cool device and it connects wirelessly. First question I ask, does it support WPA2 enterprise? You'd be surprised at the number of vendors that give me a deer in the headlights look. I would assume that any type of testing environment would support the security and privacy as well as the connectivity.
Hampton, who rightfully points out that wireless is a capital W means all form of wireless, not just Wi-Fi. Do you expect this certification that Chris mentions? Is it a platform certification? Is it a system level certification? Is it a device level certification?
When I look at it, I look at a systems level. I mean, the first thing I look at with any new wireless system that proposes to be part of a medical system is I look at patient safety, the device efficacy, and the security. If the wireless piece is crucial to the functioning of that medical device, and if it doesn't ensure those three things, we don't put it on our wireless network. In some cases, we don't purchase it at all. And we keep focusing on Wi-Fi systems in hospitals, but Rob Havas is here someplace. Rob used to work for us. But we've got a group of people who are looking at connected health applications outside the hospital, and I get involved in that too. So we have to, when I look at these stuff, I have to look at it not only patient safety, device efficacy, and security in the hospital. I have to look at what it might be like out in the patient's home, where we don't have a standard enterprise Wi-Fi network, where they may not have a Wi-Fi network at all. We may have to use the cellular system. Find any one of those wireless companies that's going to put their stamp of approval and say, we'll be responsible if our network goes down and the data doesn't go through. Doesn't happen. So when I look at a test bed, I look at something that's going to ensure those three, key properties, if you will, for that we put together. A bunch of us on this panel and the others put together as part of the risk management program when we start connecting these medical devices together over networks. You need to ensure those three key properties remain: patient safety, device efficacy, and security. That's what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for it at the systems level.
So when looking at that, Steve put out the notion of a kind of a layered protocol of testing of what seems to be a kind of very logical process of starting with a simple case and working to a much more difficult case, more devices, and a much more difficult interference environment. Fanny put out an analogy of the cell phone companies would never let a device on their network that's going to cause a problem because customers aren't going to pay. Yet it seems like I keep hearing we get devices in the hospitals and healthcare facilities that just do just that, which kind of seems a little, or the priorities may be a little out of whack. So taking the notion of testing to make sure things are going to work the way we intend and trying to come up with a logical way to do this testing. So how do we get there? Who's responsible? What do we put together? Do we need to form a standards committee, a body to lay out the process? Or is each healthcare facility responsible because each environment is different? Or can we characterize a couple of different environments to test against based on everybody's, on a few, a few cases, representative cases? So how do we get there? How do we get to the place that we need to be to make this work?
This is like the proverbial story about the blind man trying to describe the elephant. We all come at this from our own perspective, and so we look at one individual piece. So what I'm trying to do here is take the 60,000 foot view, because that's kind of what Partners pays me to do. I'm lucky in that respect. But first off, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. I think someone needs to define what it is that we mean by a medical grade wireless network. Everyone dodges that issue. Once we have an idea of what we're supposed to create with this wireless medical grade wireless system, then we can start putting standards together to define it. Once we have the standards, we can start building out the test beds. But so far, no one's really defined it. We've done a great, please don't take this wrong. The FCC's done a great job about, talking about how wonderful it is that they've created all this spectrum that's generated billions of dollars in revenue and new technologies, but they've never really helped anyone direct how we're going to be using it. So now the medical stuff comes up, and that's a critical issue if you're going to be diagnosing patients or treating them remotely. So now we've got to step in. We've got to start help defining what it is we mean when we say we expect people to create health systems with it. Because health systems are not regulated. Medical systems are. That's the old issue. What is an mHealth app? So we've got to get better granularity in what government expects us to do with this stuff and what they're willing to help us with.
No, I mean, well, different question, but following up on what Rick said. So I think it is probably the FDA, or maybe the FDA together with the FCC comes up with that definition. Of course, the difficulty is, well, a medical grade wireless network, the definition of it is generically a network that supports the medical devices for their intended use. Great. I have an infusion pump. I have a life-critical patient monitor that's sending alarms. It's a different definition. And coming to grips with that and saying that's why I had this idea of the layered approach. Well, for the one device, you might only need to pass at level 3, and the other, you might need to pass at level 5 or 6 because it's more robust testing. And basically what that's coming down to is what Michelle had talked about and what Don Witter's talked about. It's a risk-based definition. So I don't think we have a hard definition, right? Because that one I gave is a great definition, but it still doesn't tell us what we have to test to.
Okay, so what I would respond back is, one for, Rick. I mean, you've got the stage. You tell us what a wireless grade medical network is to you then. And then my second question, which maybe more to the panel and to Steve's point, is so who, if you define this layered approach and different levels of risk, so who should be defining that? Is that something you want the FDA and the FCC to do, or is that something industry should get together and define for different types of devices what the risk level is, and then try to define what the performance requirements should be? And and I'll kind of throw those out generally to the whole panel.
So when it comes to if I buy a telemetry system from Steve, we did buy a telemetry system from Steve that runs on 802.11a. I've not installed that on my IT network, wired or wireless. I've built out a completely separate wireless system for his stuff. The FDA requires him to define what those systems have to meet in order to support the intended function of his devices. So when I build out a system from a device manufacturer on an infrastructure designed and provided by that manufacturer, I know what constitutes a medical grade system for that particular medical system. Steve has defined it for me. Phil has defined it for me. The folks from GE have defined that for me. So as long as I put it on the network that they prescribed for me, I know what requirements I have to meet. And if anything goes wrong, they're held liable for producing a system that doesn't perform its intended function. When we get to the notion that now we're going to converge all of these systems onto our IT network, the question I've asked for years, and it's funny watching my friends scurry out the door when I ask this, but the question is, if I take Steve's system off of his dedicated wireless network and I put it on my IT network, what does that make my IT network? Because when he provides it, it's a registered or a regulated medical device. But if I take it off that system, I put it on mine, does that make my IT network a regulated medical device? No, it doesn't. What's that make it? Well, it makes me potentially adulterating a medical device because I've taken something, I modified it to do something it was never intended to do. In other words, I've just taken all the legal responsibility for creating a medical system I can't guarantee will work, which is why we don't have critical medical systems on our IT network. So I guess the question is, if you really want the answer the question. If I take a wireless system off of a regulated device that Steve and Phil and the folks from GE or whoever provide to me, and I put it on my network provided by any of the IT, networking companies, who is responsible for making sure that works? What does that make that network become? It used to be regulated and now it's not.
Ira, maybe we should look outside healthcare for best practices. So what industry do you think is most like healthcare in terms of the IT challenge and more the wireless challenge? I.e., which industry has the responsibility to touch almost all of the population and provide content? It's the cable industry. And if you look at the way that they've solved this problem is they didn't ask the FDA and they didn't ask the government or the FCC to solve it. They created their own organization led by the people that procure the devices and the infrastructure. And they defined the architecture and they defined their equivalent of medical grade in the cable industry. It's a 30-year plus proven record. It's taken their industry through extraordinary growth, and it's probably the backbone of most of the content that we as consumers have. So the question is, do you think healthcare is ready, and the partners and the Carillions and the Kaisers, do you think they're ready to come together and claim wireless as an asset for their industry, and as such, start to define what it is? Because that'd be hard pressed to ask Ed White. Why don't you design the medical grade network to include in the body, around the bed, in the room, wireless networks? So do you think we're ready?
Let's use a parallel example in the healthcare world of a standards driven principle that works. DICOM. It was an industry driven standard. And guess what? It works. Every vendor has their own little nuances. They can do their own little special things, their market advantage, but it has interoperability and it works.
Yeah, it's regulated under the FDA. All those PACS systems are regulated.
The DICOM standard is not, though.
It's not.
Right.
But Chris is right. It's an excellent example of the users coming together and agreeing on something so the vendors know what to build to. What Ricky points out is it's a 7-dimension chess game. It's RF, it's digital, it's security, it's human behavior. So it's very unfair to ask Welch Allyn or Ruckus to come in and warrant their performance when they have no control over how many devices, what protocols, what beacon rates are set. So the question is can we rise up? And is it time for U.S. healthcare to have a point of view on what wireless really means in a hospital? They've defined building automation, they've defined electricity, they've defined every other base building utility, but wireless still is like this orchestra where there is no testing whether or not all the instruments play together.
Let me add one more thing, Ed. I don't want to make it sound like every potential application, healthcare, medical, however you want to, split that difference. Not everything requires the highest degree of reliability. If someone is using their Fitbit and they're feeding that stuff into, some application that they're sharing with their doctor, no one's going to die if your performance during a run is 3 minutes slower than your last performance. But I'm also hearing people talk about remote control of medical devices for treatment and therapy. That's pretty critical, folks. That's not something you just want to ignore. So there needs to be some definitions to help define which of these applications really don't require the reliability and which do. And the ones that require the highest, reliability, those somehow need to be defined and protected so that, the consumers, when they go out and buy this wonderful device that they're going to take home and they're going to use it. I mean, one that I've heard numerous times is it's going to monitor my heart rate so that if I have a, potentially fatal dysrhythmia, it's going to automatically diagnose that, send my ECG to my cardiologist, call 911 and let the ER know to prep for my arrival. I look at other things, and FCC has gone to fairly great lengths to ensure that, we have E911 capabilities so that if I pick up my smartphone and I hit 911, the 911 dispatcher knows where I'm at within a couple of meters. They've taken that kind of lead already on some of these things where the expectation of the public is if I need help, I'm going to get it no matter what. And I think we need that same kind of leadership on some of these wireless health issues to help show that, we expect that reliability to be there. Did that shackle you enough?
Yeah. So on that point, I mean, do you really think and as an industry, do you really want us to sit and try to define your networks? I mean, I don't think that's really what you want.
Okay, so do me a favor. Go out and open up your favorite web browser on your favorite device, okay? Google wireless or medical grade wireless networks and tell me how many companies have white papers and position statements on how if you buy their product, you can build this, and then go in and read the fine print that says your mileage may vary. So, I don't think industry can possibly do this.
Well, but, on using Ed's, example of cable labs, I mean, could the industry get together? Could the big players, the little players get together and define this? Because it would help the industry as a whole. I mean, both, I would think it would help both from your sales point of view, if you could go out and you could make that assurance that based on coming together as an industry, you develop certain standards and levels of performance for various devices. And then say, look, these meet these industry-defined levels, standards, and protocols, and that gives you a very high assurance that it is going to work, whether it's on your if it's on your IT network or your what you call your medical network or whatnot. So I'm still torn between, is this the government's role to define, or is it better for the industry to come together and come to a meeting of the minds on how they think this is going to work and should work within their facilities?
I would invite you to do what I did and call AT&T, Comcast, Cox Cable, Verizon, and all of them. We've had them. We actually had representatives from a lot of those different companies at some of the AMI conferences that we've had in the past on wireless systems and reliability. And I've asked them point blank. And we've had a lot of those companies come in and talk with us about providing connectivity for connected health. And I've asked them point blank, what kind of reliability guarantees can you give us for critical stuff? Oh, we will never do that. No, we can't do that. Just keep that off of our networks. They're looking for guidance too. I mean, no one knows what medical grade wireless is, so someone needs to do that. Sorry. I'd like to give you an out. I just don't see it.
Let's poll the panelists there, because it's Ricky's pretty clear. He thinks the FCC should do it. Let's poll. Chris, how about you?
I don't agree with Rick, okay. And I'm one of his friends, but I'm not scurrying for the door.
All right.
I think it should be an industry-driven, but I'm philosophically opposed to more government regulation.
Fanny, how about you?
To that point, let me add one thing. I'm not in favor of government regulation, but sometimes I think you have to have it. My dad was a cop, and one of the things he said is we wouldn't need speed limits if everyone drove at the right speed. But when people don't do or won't do what they're supposed to do, that's when government has to step in. Okay. So if you can convince all these people to do it.
Getting gray hair by the second. Fanny?
One more thought, though, that I want to share is it really depends on the organization and how they're implementing technology. We talked about medical grade wireless technology, and we think about medical telemetry, life safety. Well, you got these things, you build in workflows that say, all right, code blue alerts are going to go over the cellular network now because we're going to do a quiet hospital. Have you created a medical device? No. Is it a life safety issue? Yes.
And to that point, I can honestly say I've heard from at least 4 hospitals who have had serious life-threatening incidents. One has told me that a patient expired. And I got to be honest with you, I was visiting someone close to me a while back, and that alarm system didn't work. And if I hadn't intervened, I think the patient would have had much more serious outcomes.
Fanny,
And,
what do you
and it's
think?
one reason why we don't have those things in the hospitals where I work. I can't trust the systems.
Fanny?
So I would go back to Ed's point about what has worked. And you brought up cable industry, Cable Labs has done a great job. I brought up 3GPP, the cellular operators industry. It needs to be, in this case, I think the analog is the hospital administrator. Who has the headache? Whose headache is it? Those people will want to solve it. And the more they can come together as a forum to solve it, the more interoperable devices the vendors will design to the standards that they create. And I think the hospital administrators and IT folks have the power to allow or disallow and define policies in the hospital, just like an AT&T or Verizon has the power to define the policies on their network.
Ed?
Yeah, I kind of agree. The idea for us as a manufacturer, we work with our customers all the time. We can make any adaptation to anything that we need as long as we have a plan. And from our perspective, it would probably be the same as somebody give us some roadmap of what we need to do. So, yeah.
Steve?
Well, somewhere between Rick and Chris. So I think we all agree we need a plan, right? So far, the industry hasn't come together to create a plan, right? And we have all kinds of new companies coming in. They have a USB port, they put a USB Wi-Fi dongle on it, and they say, hey, we got a wireless medical device. Anybody had one of those fail in their hospital? Yeah. So while I prefer that the industry would do it, maybe there needs to be some government incentive to do it. Certainly, the FCC and or FDA shouldn't just go in a closet and say, well, this looks good, right? If you guys do come up with a definition, it's based on your track record. You're going to call in Rick and Sean Jackman and maybe Phil. Touche. But how long are we going to wait for industry, whether it's medical device manufacturers, the infrastructure manufacturers, or the hospitals, to do this, right? There's a pretty big significant difference, right? We've got in cellular a few big players. In cable, a few big players. How many 1,000-bed hospitals are there? How many hospital chains are there that have more than 5 hospitals? And how many hundreds and hundreds of 100 and 200-bed community hospitals are there out there? So it's a lot bigger herd it's herding 1,000 cats instead of 50 horses.
There's a big difference between when you're comparing cellular to this, is a cellular company does have control of the client device. They can look into the device, they can see what's happening with the device, they can turn the power on, they can turn the power up or down, whatever. And in Wi-Fi, based on the way the standard's written, you have no control of the client. And that's the big issue. Talking to Sean earlier, I can't tell you how many times I've seen on our own internal lists, power save. An iPhone goes to sleep every 90 seconds and it wakes up, it goes to sleep. It does this constantly to save its battery. But if you look at a laptop or any of the medical device, I'm sure they all go to sleep too. And if the access point's not set for the same power save number, the device data that the device is trying to send is going to get lost. It's not going to be buffered properly. It's going to be transmitted when it's not supposed to be. Something's going to happen. And this is part of the stuff that needs to be discussed with these testing and how they're going to interact together. Again, that's not part of the Wi-Fi Alliance standard.
So at least you think you're going to get off. Do you think the FCC intended for Wi-Fi to be the backbone of a healthcare wireless network?
That's why they call it ISM.
And do you think we should, as an industry, hospitals and health systems, petition for protected spectrum more than the whopping WMTS spectrum? So, I mean, maybe that's a path where it may not be dedicated, but it may be prioritized, the use of small cell architecture. But who has the most to win or lose at this game from a time, since time is the enemy, because the problem is growing every day exponentially? Do we have the time, even if Ricky could wave his magic wand and have the FCC do it? So how do we create the sense of urgency, and is procurement power perhaps, an asset to bear in buying the type of architectures that they want out of their vendors? Because I would think hospitals, Sean has more control, I know not absolute control, but he has more control over the devices that enter his hospital if it's procured. What walks into the hospital, you just have to manage. So I think it is time. And I think it's almost an inevitable outcome. If it's going to be fixed, it has to be fixed by the people that buy the systems. Now, Steve's exactly right. How do you herd 5,500 hospitals? But they're really in the hands of only about 30 companies. So the problem may not be as complex as we think.
I'll disagree about the complexity, but going back to hospitals buying the appropriate components. Okay, how many people out there make components that you sell to medical to hospitals? How many of you know what a medical, a wireless grade medical system is? How many of you know what to build it to? Okay, no hands. How many of you make stuff that you sell to hospitals? Wrong. Okay, there's enough back there. So there's people back there that sell stuff to hospitals. They don't even know what they're building it for. So we've got an apple, we're putting the cart before the horse in some cases. If we don't know what standards to build it to, if we don't know what the expectations are or the requirements are, it's nice to talk about test beds, but what are you going to test? And let me go back and touch on this, on the spectrum piece. I've been a licensed ham operator and commercial radio operator for way too long. So I've worked with the FCC a lot in some way, shape, or form. And it's always kind of a love-hate relationship. No matter how much spectrum you have, you always want more. And everyone's that way. I've not always agreed with how the FCC has divvied out the spectrum. But be that as it may, I got to be honest with you. The recent goings on between the auctioning or the analog to digital TV conversions, the required auction to take place of that, has created a position I think has really put the FCC between a rock and a hard place. They created the wireless medical telemetry service, and now they're having to look at sharing it. Before it was protected spectrum. It was basically us and radio astronomy in the 608 band, channel 37, TV channel 37. And now, because Congress required them to auction off all of the spectrum that originally they had planned to allow TV white spaces stuff, there's no place for TV white spaces except, ta-da, TV channel 37. So now they're looking at the protected spectrum that we used to have. We're now going to have to share it. So what does it really mean to create quote unquote protected spectrum when the FCC, the body that's required to do the protection, can't protect it either? I got to be honest with you, I've got grave reservations about our wireless systems that are in that band. I'm still waiting to figure out what I'm going to do with them, where I'm going to put them. So the point of it is the FCC, the FCC can give it and Congress can take away. Did that get you off the hook, Ira?
You have any job openings at the FCC? A question? No, Ricky might. A question from the audience, from Twitter and email, and this is a pretty good one. Will the Internet of Things and device data analytics radically change medical device test beds and R&D?
Yes. No, what I think that's really maybe getting at is let's say we knew the definition of a medical grade wireless network and we had the test protocols, right? Oh, wireless is a pretty fast changing technology, right? So you build the test bed, you invest all this money, and in 6 months it's obsolete because the newest, latest, greatest thing or standard or protocol has come out. So that's one of the things that is a challenge, is it's a moving target. And as Sean pointed out, it's a moving target that's still anchored 10 years ago because I've got stuff in my hospital that's that old. Anyone else?
Should it be a hospital-only problem? How about care in the home? Should healthcare as a vertical market have a point of view of the wireless environment inside the home?
Prayers up, Heartfire Warriors, Biofield Adjudicators, for Wesson and all of our lovely folks here this morning. Welcome, Ophelia and Sal Lyon, so and well. Karen, good morning. I hope that you are hearing them query the fact that should we have your house as part of your at-home healthcare? I hope that you are understanding the robust engineering, data workflows, interoperability, and additional security involved in these discussions by the appropriate associations, the appropriate divisions, and the appropriate engineering core of our nation. Therefore, hopefully, when you rewind to the beginning of just this video and I lay out body area network, cyber physical, you hear them discussing your cable operators. That's right. That is absolutely right. And that is exactly why most people know that you got a cable modem in your house, fiber to the house. Maybe you have a smart home with a smart meter. These systems are all involved in watching your body area network and reporting your biological signals. This is an engineered and fully deployed system. There are no mysteries. There's no conspiracies. We have plenty of documented data that folks can go through. And I've worked very, very hard to help local law enforcement, any nurses and doctors that want to know. I was advised by 3 different sets of local type of law enforcement who told their own local doctors and nurses, just don't say anything, because as you can hear, the choice was never theirs. They, even in Congress earlier this year, the police departments and people trying to deal with these systems on the ground, they said the technology is there. It's the access to the technology that is such a problem. Yes, that is a component of our embedded clearances, our signature directorates, plural, and all this other secrecy that was built to shield this system from being known until they were ready to say, well, here you go. We've already done it. We're doing it. And this is without getting into human augmentation, which I will be closing this presentation with a note about human augmentation and your bioelectronic products, bioelectronic medicine that are seemingly everywhere, so that people have a better idea of what you are actually signing up for. The most important component, before I hit play again, that I would like you to be thinking of is Soylent Green. Green. No, I am not kidding. They, a long time ago, when I worked, we went from dial-up to cable modem. Huge change in the network. And I can assure you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you are going from cable modem to body area network. I asserted this 2 years ago, and I worked diligently to be wrong. I was hopeful I could find ways to prove that there was a hole somewhere, that it wasn't really deployed, that it was hidden away. And instead, we found this. So I hope you can take a breath, whoever you are, and whatever information you think you thought you knew, much like a lot of us, including people whose screen names I see here right now, we thought we knew too. We thought we got to be crazy. There ain't no way they would just do this to human bodies being under their skin for this long and not say anything. Yeah, they would. And they did. And so now we deal with that and we keep going because the mitigation for protecting yourself has completely changed. And you're not ripping pacemakers out of people's chests. Nobody's getting rid of their wireless earbuds. Nobody's afraid of their AM/FM radio or their microwave. And nobody's afraid of the Xbox Kinect or the Fitbit. Right. So as long as we can meet people at the level of their comprehension, then as a collective whole, for real, not this pie in the sky, ascension and, oh, boogada boogada, will be united by an alien threat or whatever. Hopefully, given its health care, not, hey, I want to upgrade my home theater or, my iPod or what. No. You no longer are alone under your own skin, period. And they keep saying it's national security. Well, could you have told people? For crying out loud. And that is the bulk of our channel, so that people cannot be afraid and instead be informed so that they can assess their own health, their own environment with real engineering. No maybes. All right, onwards with our FDA, FCC. This how it gonna be from Washington, D.C., back in our time machine 10 years ago.
Well, I think that's the problem for the future. Like I said, I'm already looking at stuff that we're trying to use in the home, and the nice thing about modern technology is our smartphones and whatever else other devices we might have. It has enough computing power to do a lot of things that used to require mainframes and stuff that only resided in hospitals. So with the right sensors, I think a lot of this stuff can move out to the home. And that again is begs the question: at what point does a simple sensor and an application stop being a fitness device? I mean, Polar's been making heart rate monitors for a long time, but I'd never really thought that I would use a Polar heart rate monitor in a hospital to keep track of a cardiac patient, right? So at what point does the Polar Group or any of these other device manufacturers that make fitness monitors, at what point in time do those become medical devices? And that's the question that I think the FDA and the FCC really need to look at, because it's really going to upend how we do regulation of these things. And frankly, when it comes to medical devices, we've got these things called liability. Who absorbs that?
Let's open up for questions. Sean?
Jackman, Kaiser Permanente. We talk about Wi-Fi a lot up here. With small cell, the cellular indoor, they're doing cellular indoors now. To what extent should we be looking at medical grade wireless to also include LTE and perhaps, some variant of 3G?
My personal opinion, medical grade wireless is used by Ricky means every wireless frequency that is intended to support a medical cause. It's like the analogy is, in most hospitals, you have a critical electrical network, right? A fail-safe electrical network. So I think it has to be all encompassing.
If I could jump in on LTE, that's actually a good question, because LTE at least has, if you deploy IMS, which is IP multimedia subsystem, you have priorities. It's something that can be managed by an operator to assign higher priorities to more critical medical services.
But then you run into the problem of spectrum, because every operator is running LTE on a different band.
Including unlicensed now.
Yeah, so then you have LTEU, which opens up a whole nother issue.
License assisted access stuff, yeah.
Well,
And other,
Qualcomm just changed it yesterday to LWA.
whatever they call it, arose by another
But
name.
it's collision avoidance now.
Yeah.
So that's what they're talking
We still
about.
have 900 megahertz phones
Yeah.
for another year.
Next question. Yes, Hazem Rifai, University of Oklahoma. So the densification of 5G, which is the femtocells and the small cells and so on, a lot of capabilities coming in the systems, the new systems, as self-organized networks. And so self-organized networks are going to be adapting power, adapting maybe sensitivity, adapting their packet length, adapting their polling windows, and adapting all of those based on an environment, given environment, deployed at. So is that going to help coexistence or is going to hinder coexistence? And how do you do a test bed to go and accommodate and test for these type of activities?
That's going to be backhaul. You might be able to do all what you just said with the small cell itself, but how's it being backhauled? To where? With what? So to give a vendor opportunity to come into your hospital to deploy, you're going to give every cellular vendor the same access, and how many cables you're going to run through the building to do all those small cells is another thing that we're running into an issue with. I'm running into an issue talking to cellular operators about that.
One of the other issues with the small cell is you have hundreds or thousands of different medical devices and medical device types. So just like now, suppose in theory, if it's cellular, the only way you get on the AT&T network is if you validated that cellular module with AT&T. So a lot of that may be mitigated, but if you have a whole bunch of different manufacturers producing devices that are running on these, and each one tweaks them a little bit, then we return to this same problem of, well, which driver is it? And you can have a lot of changes then. So in the world where, if that comes to a fruition where we're using small cellular to send data in hospitals, I would love to just have, there are 3 radios. There's the Sprint radio, there's the AT&T radio, and there's the Nextel radio or whatever, right? And we all buy the same radio.
Before we get to Mark, let me just throw something else out or make a comment. So, Rick, you had mentioned what's going on in the TV bands, specifically 608 to 614, and changes that may be happening because of the incentive auction, and as we're responding to an act of Congress. So, so one of the things that occurs to me, well, first of all, as Julie opened up this morning and said, one of the most rewarding things that we do is, things that really have a real effect on people and help them. And often that's, working on the medical devices and some of the things we're able to enable. And I completely agree with that notion. I personally find it one of the most rewarding things that we do. So the last thing that we want to do is have an adverse effect on medical devices, medical networks. And as we proceed, that's our goal in moving forward with any change that may be happening. That said, and Mark, maybe this plays into a little bit what you might be going to ask or comment on, but so part of enabling us to make whatever changes and do no harm is a certain amount of testing. And I know Mark has been involved in some testing on channel 37 of devices against medical telemetry, but it's largely kind of user defined by the folks doing the test. So is this a place where folks can maybe get together and agree, maybe in a limited case, is there some standardized way that we should be testing these and defining an environment and characteristics to inform the commission on how best to move forward, rather than it just being completely haphazard. Everything's then sent to the record. We take a look at it, and then we make some judgments based on the results. And then there's typically a lot of disagreement over different parties with different positions on how the tests were run and what they mean. And it would be much better if, again, there was an industry consensus that could come together and say, here's how we think it should be, here's what we think the thresholds are, and as a unified position. I mean, maybe that's kind of too much to ask, but is there a way to get to that?
I think there is, but first you have to define what it is you're trying to get to. So let me really set Mark up for a comment, because at one point in time I asked, okay, so if we're going to have this contention problem between WMTS and TV white spaces, and one of the things that TV white spaces propose to do is to create some kind of connectivity for medical devices, why don't we look at just wholesale swapping from WMTS to TV white spaces? I'm not opposed to that, as long as I know that the systems will work, and I got to be honest with you, it's more than just about RF coexistence. If you look at how TV white spaces is set up in order to, so for those not familiar with it, the FCC is looking at creating exclusion zones around hospitals to prevent the interference, and the size of those exclusion zone is pretty much the argument point right now. The question is, so the TV white space device is supposed to, determine its ability to use those areas based upon some database. I know some pretty smart hackers, but I don't see a whole lot of investigation into how secure those systems can be made. There's been GPS spoofing. So is it possible? And I don't know. This is a Hollywood scenario that the hackers out there will just love to get their hands on. There's been people who've been able to spoof GPSs. So if they go in and spoof GPS readings around a hospital, can they cause TV white space stuff to interfere with telemetry in WMTS? Is that hypothetical? It's possible. I don't know how probable it is, but when that's all of the stuff I have to look. It's not just the coexistence stuff. So I want to give Mark a shot.
Did we ask and answer your question?
Did I?
So first of all, Mark Gibson with ComSearch. I started up here to applaud Rick on his comment about WMTS. We've been working in this area probably as much as anybody. And as Ira said, we did some recent testing that got filed by GE and the WMTS Coalition. And I'm not going to get into the noise about that. Rick makes a very strong point about some of the ironies involved around WMTS, and if you go back and look at the original rulemaking for TV white space, there were a lot of comments on the record that said, let's keep channel 37 sacrosanct for patient care and radio astronomy. I was actually going to ask a question, and if I'm happy to talk in the break about what we did in the measurements. We did show in the measurements that we could configure a situation where we could cause interference. And we're going to go back out and do it again so we can have the repeatable. I thought the gentleman from NIST this morning described a very good method for producible test results, and so we're going to try to do that. But what I actually wanted to do is to make a question, maybe it's rhetorical, I don't know, about the point Ed made about should there be more spectrum available for healthcare. The FCC about last year, I think it was June last year, finalized the rulemaking for MBANs, and where they allocated 40 megahertz to wireless, to medical body area networks. And since then, they've been working on the frequency coordinator part, which they just finished. But Ira, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no manufacturers banging down your door for equipment certification.
I've heard rumors that there's equipment in the pipeline ready to go.
I've heard rumors too, and that's been 3 years out. So the point to be made on it is that if you make it, will they come, or are you making it because they've asked for it? Because the issue is, maybe this is more of a soapbox, when the manufacturers came to you, it was GE and Philips to the commission for allocation of the rules and whatnot. They were pretty hot to trot. And the rulemaking process took a lot longer than they had expected, and that's just because they probably didn't have a lot of familiarity with the way the commission works. And the commission did their proper, vetting, and I know you're going to make a comment, Ira, so just and it's not a comment about the rulemaking process, it's more the setting expectations. Yeah. And so since this is a workshop on test beds, let me shift to the test bed question, and that is, can we conceive test beds to test coexistence of medical body area network systems with aeronautical mobile telemetry, which that's the sharing paradigm there. And to Ricky's point again, can we do that to also test WMTS, which never really had to do it, coexisting with unlicensed devices, which now could include any number of things, and I won't comment about the NAB thing.
All right, let me be a little more specific on the MBANs. And as you know, once we enable rules, it takes time for the manufacturing process to develop and production lines and develop the test protocols and so on and so forth. And we just finished as far as finalizing rules and the designated and coordinator and so forth. So again, so I know our lab has been working with some folks on finalizing test procedures from our perspective. And that is, my understanding is very close to being finalized. And now that a coordinator that is in place, that there are folks who are very close and ready to submit equipment for approval, and they've just been waiting for the lab to finish up its work. And I think that's been moving at a pretty good pace, given how the regulatory process has moved. So I do think we are going to see things happening in that band, relatively soon. And I think that'll be a good thing, and it'll open up, spectrum that is right now would share with aeronautical telemetry. It should be fairly compatible, the way we've worked through the proceeding, and I think people are looking forward to it. And hopefully it will provide an avenue for folks to use devices without maybe some of the issues that we've heard today. Getting to your second point of testing of these various things, I'll throw that out to the panel to answer. What would be the best way to do this, to set something up and to work through those issues? Is it the government's responsibility to be doing this? Is it the industry? I know I keep harping on this, but I don't think we've really converged on. There's differences of opinion, but where do we want this to go, and how are we going to get it done?
Dr. Goldman, why don't you ask the last question, and then we'll try to wrap up. We got about 5 minutes.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Julian Goldman from Partners Healthcare and Mass General Hospital. I was instructed we should all introduce ourselves. Right? Okay. Thank you. So I've been listening to a lot of really good ideas, good debate. Achieving consensus may or may not be possible. But I was also reminded of one of the goals for the session of identifying and prioritizing key features, functions, and so forth. And that's the title of this session, but I think throughout the day we've been coming up with a lot of wonderful ideas, and I wonder how we'll end up defining the next steps. So, if out of that range of things that have been brought up, for example, which are the most important devices, or which are the most important physical or clinical domains, which are the most important functions, which are the most important frequency bands or technologies. We, at some point today, I'm not trying to put this on you in this panel, but I was listening to this, and it's a very rich discussion. It's so rich that I wonder when we will be able to prioritize it or start to decide what to work on next. So thought I would kind of gently ask, because I'm eager to see what the priorities are based upon the panel's discussion, what you think might be the first or top few things to work on, if that's an appropriate way to look at it.
Well, I think it's an excellent question, because otherwise for the panel, it's a so what, it's a great discussion. I can tell you at the Center for Medical Interoperability, we did an interesting exercise. We took 10 health systems and asked them to prioritize by modality and by device and by frequency what is most mission and life critical as it relates to the use of wireless as defined by a health system level platform. And it is fascinating, because it not only produces a prioritization, it produces the list of vendors that are expected to participate. So we'll share that with you. Is Chris Gibbons yeah. You need to just step right up to the mic.
Okay. How'd you even know? I just actually sort of follow up on something Julian said. We're physicians, so forgive us if it's a little bit naive, but it's the conversation that I've been hearing, and I've learned quite a bit. It sounds like we're almost using a notion of healthcare system that's becoming antiquated. I go back a little bit to what Harry was saying a little while ago, and I think Rick has brought up some of this, but medical care happens outside of hospitals, but we've mostly been talking about hospital environments, and I would encourage the panel to think about, is that thinking adequate when we talk about the future, where more and more of what used to happen or today happens in hospitals isn't happening in hospitals anymore. And just to point out, it's not just the future. When Harry and I were interns at Hopkins almost 25 years ago, and both in the cardiac units, There were patients that we operated on for cardiac surgery. They got this device, a left ventricular assist device. These are extremely sick patients, and I stayed awake all night, many nights, because they could change on a dime and die, and you have to take care of them. Now, today, less than 25 years later, patients are going home with those devices. That was the cardiac ICU. We couldn't envision patients going home with those devices. And so this is not just the future, this is now. And so if we're thinking about only the hospital environment as the place medical care happens and only devices that are used in the four walls of those hospitals, we might be designing systems for the past instead of the future.
Last questions, and we'll summarize.
Hi, Jeff Silverberg, FDA. 3 quick points, if I can remember all of them. First of all, I hope I speak for my colleagues when I say that we're not particularly comfortable with the term medical grade wireless.
I know that.
Well, maybe not everybody knows, right? Second of all, what is a medical device is hopefully clearly defined at FDA and our regulations. It's used to diagnose or treat, and there's also guidances as far as what is and is not. Maybe it might be a device, but we don't regulate it, like mobile apps and things like that. We have guidances on that. And we also have a process that if you're not sure if something is a medical device, you could ask us, and there's somebody an expert that looks at it and says yes or no. And the final point I'd like to make, I've heard, so who's going to do this? Is industry, is government? Some of the groups that we've already mentioned have been working on this for a while, and everybody. So C63 is, government, industry, healthcare. Everybody's involved. The AMI organization, the committee that's working on that. So, it's not going as fast as we would like. Get involved, participate, and maybe we can come up with something good. Thank you.
So let me try to bring it to a close. Although I had to chuckle at an email question. How do we protect our mission critical Wi-Fi medical devices? Which I think just so summarizes the problem we're all frustrated with, right? You're putting mission life critical things over an unprotected band. But here's my conclusion. There is no national wireless testbed, and there needs to be. Whether it's industry-led or FCC-led, I think it's a hybrid. But unless the people that pay money change behavior, the Steves and the Eds companies won't change, period. Because the free market's going to continue, and they have to protect their businesses. But we must define it at a complex enough platform level that you don't stumble right out of the blocks. It's not a component issue. It's not a device issue. It is perhaps the most, healthcare and wireless are the two, when you combine the two, it's the most complex use of wireless on the planet, right? So we have to step up to almost make the environment what our children expect, because they've grown up with it in their hands. And to Dr. Goldman's point, you got to start with something real. So, let's build something real, let's put real products in it, and let's get our hands dirty on it, but let's be inclusive, right? It's not a standards body action as much as it is, let's come together, figure out the reference architecture for what is medical grade, and start to work on it. So those are my key takeaways from the panel. So anything to add? All right, thank you very much.
All right, so we're almost to the end. We do have another panel to go through, but we're not going to be doing that right this moment. I'm going to end there with this live stream because that's a lot. And I think that people who are serious and are, task oriented, excuse me, attempting to help their friends and family understand a programming language for living cells. New language lets researchers design novel biological circuits. MIT 2016. For us here on the channel, it's our college students again playing with that there E. coli in the enteric nervous system. MIT biological engineers have created a programming language that allows them to rapidly design complex DNA-encoded circuits that give new functions to living cells. Using this language, anyone can write a program for the function they want, such as detecting and responding to certain environmental conditions. They can then generate a DNA sequence, excuse me, that will achieve it. It is literally a programming language for bacteria. And here on the channel, we've talked about synthetic biology open language, BioBricks, DNA steganography, okay? You use a text-based language just like you're programming a computer. Then you take that text and you compile it, and it turns into a DNA sequence that you put into the cell, and the circuit runs inside the cell. Voigt and colleagues at Boston University and the National Institute of Standards and Technology have used this language, which they describe in the April 1st issue of Science, to build circuits that can detect up to 3 inputs and respond in different ways. Future applications for this kind of programming include designing bacterial cells that can produce a cancer drug when they detect a tumor, or creating yeast cells that can halt their own fermentation process if too many toxic byproducts build up. The researchers plan to make the user design interface available on the web. No experience needed. Over the past 15 years, biologists and engineers have designed many genetic parts, such as sensors, memory switches, and biological clocks that can be combined to modify existing cell functions and add new ones. However, designing each circuit is a laborious process that requires great expertise and often a lot of trial and error. You have to have this really intimate knowledge of how those pieces are going to work and how they're going to come together. Users of the new programming language, however, need no special knowledge of genetic engineering. You could be completely naive as to how any of it works. That's what's really different about this. You could be a student in high school and go on to the web-based server and type out the program you want, excuse me, and it spits back the DNA sequence. The language is based on Verilog, which is commonly used to program computer chips. To create a version of the language that would work for cells, the researchers designed computing elements such as logic gates and sensors that can be encoded in a bacterial cell's DNA. The sensors can detect different compounds, such as oxygen or glucose, as well as light, temperature, acidity, and other environmental conditions. Users can also add their own sensors. It's very customizable. The biggest challenge, he says, was designing the 14 logic gates used in the circuit so they wouldn't interfere with each other once placed in the complex environment of a living cell. In the current version of the programming language, these genetic parts are optimized for E. coli, but the researchers are working on expanding the language for other strains of bacteria, including bacteroides, commonly found in the human gut, Pseudomonas, which often lives in plant roots, and the yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, something I would assume yeast derivative. Oh, man, hang on. I know it's a yeast derivative, but something else is clicking in my brain. Yeah, brewer's yeast. Yes. Yeah, that's what we were watching in our college student video. Now, real quick, let's see, synthetic biology open language. Proposed data standard for exchanging synthetic biology designs between software packages under development since 2008. As your promoter, ribosomes, terminator operators, protease, signature, etc., etc. You have your BioBricks. And your standard DNA sequences used in synthetic biology to build novel biological systems. Same stuff. Lego biology. This is a great article by Medium in 2021. BioBricks, the Legos of synthetic biology. That every scientist once played with Legos. And now, like Lego being the building blocks to create different working and static models, the biobricks are DNA sequences that can perform various desired biological functions and mechanisms with feedback mechanisms. A biobrick, in short, is a man-made elementary DNA sequence that codes for RNA or proteins and can be readily assembled to produce more complex biological systems. So when you put this together, you have your bacteria-based biosensors. This is also in Rice University. We've shown it before. Georgia Institute of Technology, Northeastern University, Johns Hopkins, etc. Okay. This is what they've been doing already. And this is why, in my opinion, now this part's opinion, they want those wearables on to double check different vectors of telemetry for quality of service for the precision AI healthcare. And the people that have been working on all this, nice and quiet, now we're seeing it in deployment. And they're using AI and machine learning with those bioelectromagnetic algorithms only for you. Only you. Nobody else, just you. Okay? And a lot of people, they just want to feel better. So when we tell them they're under your skin 24/7, they go, yeah, but they've already been there, so no big deal. They've got my genetics, omics. They're going to real-time monitor me. I'm going to look at my wearable and I'm going to feel better. And the problem that I have with it, just me and a lot of people here on the channel, thanks, so and well, is that nobody asked and they waived our consent, sold our DNA on the NASDAQ for a couple of years now, and our bodies are spread out in something called feeder grids with companies. And nobody seems to care. Excuse me, but it's really weird to me that every time I said, hey, they're under the skin. No, this is a eugenics system. No. They love us. They're going to help us. And I'm like, they've had 5 years to tell you what they're doing. The video we're watching is 10 years old. And you hear those doctors, they're like, dude, we were doing stuff 25 years ago. This is going really fast. And here we are now, after 5 years of, go get, grandma's going to die. Hurry up and do this and do that. And then we have all these product peddlers for bioelectronic medicine. Now, for me personally, from the beginning, I said, where is the missing biology? The missing physiology. And people called me stupid. They said, you're being a spiritual whack job. And I said, no, I'm looking for electrophysiology. I'm looking for bioelectricity, which is the electrical phenomena associated with living organisms, which I hope you are, unless you're a Tesla bot, generated by the uneven distribution of ions across cell membranes. And then I got the easy water people that said, Sabrina, DNA is baloney. It's all just electrons and photons. And I thought, oh, Lord, because there could be some real truth to that. But let's see what we get, because nobody could even talk about virology properly. That had its own problems with all these biologists and all these doctors. So then they spun in that circle. And I'm sitting here going, are you guys going to talk about the way you're logging into these bodies? And they acted like they had no idea what I was responding to. Meanwhile, regenerative medicine is crazy. Since 2013, Tufts University, Harvard, Vermont, and I'm looking around going, wait a minute, whoa. So everybody knows that you're doing this. You have wearables of all kinds, including smart bandages. You have hang on, let me get the right image here. You have your smart bandages. You have injectable intelligent cells. You have AI-driven wearable bioelectronics and digital healthcare. It's more than just the thing on your arm. You have people with smart pills, smart tattoos, and these are not new. They are not new. This is a component of biohacking that's been around for a while. Smart tattoos, that's another one. Smart bandages. And nobody would talk about how. They were just running to, I'm going to get my light wave patches. Let me see if those come up. And all these other photonic products as well. All of this stuff is watched with the Internet of Medical Things. All of it, by law. They have to, so they can ensure you cannot be hacked. So here we are. Patches, tattoos, pills, the new bioelectronics with living neural circuits, and a ton of nanotechnology that is super old, super old. So I said, have you people not went to nano.gov? No, I have no idea. I can't find it under the microscope. We got to fight about it. Then do 20 podcasts about it. And I said, I don't got time for that. I have to do the dishes, hit the treadmill here at home. You know, I have a family. What is going on here? We have 1959. There's Richard Feynman. Now 2014 forward. Molecular communication, Rice University, their buckyballs. I'm just on the timeline at the NNI, which is part of .gov. So I couldn't figure out why they didn't tell people. The quantum dot, 1993, MIT. 1993, National Nanofabrication Users Network. What are we doing here? Cornell University, Interagency Working Group on Nanotechnology. Why are we not talking about this on all these consumer products in 1999 to the early zeros, making baseball bats, antibacterial socks, clear sunscreens, cosmetics, stain-resistant clothing? It's all nanotechnology. 2000, President Clinton launched the National Nanotechnology Initiative to coordinate federal research and development efforts and promote United States competitiveness in nanotechnology. Congress funded the NNI, that's where we are right now, nano.gov, for the first time in fiscal year 2001. So all of these companies are overseen by these different interagency working groups, which are all handled out of the White House. Got a strategic plan in 2004, got your graphene in 2004. And I mean, I cannot make sense of why they said nothing other than be afraid, put your mask on, do what we say. And boogada, Jesus or the aliens are coming. Here's the National Institute of Standards and Technology established, the Center for Nanoscale Science and Technology. Oh, there is no Internet of Bodies. Oh, there is no nano. So as you can see, I got stuck in the middle of all these different operations and confused folks. There were some of them genuinely confused, and a whole lot of other people that were already making money on the bioelectronic medicines. Whether it was smart bandages or wearable stuff that could be logged into remotely, 3D materials, 3D printing, wireless drug delivery. And so I said, yo, college textbook 2014, wireless drugging. Wireless on-demand drug delivery in our college textbook, tested in the senior homes. Wireless on-demand drug delivery exploits exogenous stimuli, external stimuli, like acoustic waves, electric fields, magnetic fields, and electromagnetic radiation. Everybody just stared at me. And I'm like, are you going to admit that the body is electrical? No. Okay. Are you going to admit that you're under the skin for 30 years? No, definitely not. No. Okay. Are you going to admit that you're recording people's neurons for databases for decades? No. Well, what are you going to tell people? The aliens are coming. Well, that's really interesting because that's not what we're doing here. Well, I mean, maybe you are. I mean, maybe we're going to have to deal with Air Force Works, previously known as Skunk Works. But currently, with our $50 billion and all these different people talking about, oh, look at our new AI precision healthcare, put your wearable on. I'm sitting here going, that's exogenous stimuli. That's electronic warfare under the skin, millimeter wave within, not a problem. And this has all been worked out. This isn't new. Didn't show up in 2019. Sorry. I can even go back to 2011 bingo card paper. And so again, we're sitting here with all this frequencies and nobody knows and it's quantum. And I'm like, are you talking about the quantum test beds with the National Institute of Standards and Technology? Well, they don't have it yet. And I'm like, they've been running post-quantum cryptography with NIST since 1988. See previous videos. No kidding. So are we going to talk about photons? Are we going to talk about biophotons that are made by the human body? No. We're going to talk about bioelectricity? No. Okay. Well, then what are we doing here? We're going to scare people into submission? Is that what we're doing because the liver is religious? So that's how we ended up here. They took away human biology, did R&D, and now here we are with channel characterization inside the body, January 2022 with the IEEE transactions with biomedical engineering. And so from the jump, for me personally, me, Sabrina Wallace, I said, hey, DARPA N2, brain-computer interface testing that Giordano spoke of to students. Hello? They've been researching the brain-computer interface since the 70s, and they said, no, you're stupid, you're crazy, and you're not allowed to be pissed off. And I'm going, whoa. All this stuff with smart dust, millimeter wave, CubeSat, and the market share is massive. Billions of dollars in every direction for remote patient monitoring. Can we talk about this? No, you're stupid. And don't be pissed off. And I said, I was a test subject when I was little. Well, you're crazy. I said, no, I'm not crazy. Got scars on the body and medical records. I said, I don't want anything under my skin. I remember what that felt like. I fought against this my whole life. And you said I was stupid and crazy. When in reality, since the introduction of WBAN in 1971 for remote healthcare monitoring, many other sectors have adopted WBAN technologies as described below. Number one, healthcare. 10 years ago, there they are. Blah, 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 pacemakers and everything else. So I figured this out mostly on my own because all my life, people kept saying, oh, yeah, the body's not electrical. You're stupid. And that's all they would do. They would just call me names. And I'm like, sticks and stones may break my bones. The words will never hurt me. Dude, HOW. Oh, I don't know. I'm so dumb. No, you're not. You're lying. And you're covering up for these jobs. Why? Well, it's very simple. What does ISR stand for? Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance. Oh, okay. How are you hunting bodies? The WBAN. Oh, they would never. Oh, I know. We love to play that game. They would never. They have no idea. They're just so dumb. 2014, the Hunter tracking randomly moving WBAN targets. But remember, they're only doing it for at-home healthcare. They're doing it to make sure that those sensor networks are appropriately communicating the quality of service. They do it because they love you. And so this whole time I've been here going, are you going to tell people that you're moving to the electronic integrated disease surveillance system that you've also had since the 1980s with the CDC? No. You going to tell them about the Tiberius data set with Project Salus watching the Cove WBAN? No. Wow. Amazing. Okay. So that's how I ended up in the middle of all this, wondering why is it that people don't know their body is electrical? Why is it they don't know about bioelectronic medicine, the physiolome, the electrome? And why it is that I'm getting yelled at when these are the Agenda 2030 goals that are already finished for the biodigital convergence. Oh, it's just getting here. And I said, no, they've been spending our tax dollars on this for 20 years. We're looking at biomedicine, biotechnology, and cognitive neuroscience, cognitive warfare, genomics, transcriptomics, synthetic biology, biomimetics, organ on a chip. And the main issue I have is right here, human augmentation. If you want to biohack, that's fine, but they're not giving anybody a choice. All humans are destined for augmentation. Full stop. Deloitte, same thing as who's running all your Bitcoin and your distributed ledger technology, said we're going to augment our GDP, gross domestic product. What would that be? Our population. So everybody is going to be a millionaire, ubiquitously monitored under the skin, disease-free, handsome, intelligent. It's going to be great. Well, if that's the case, then why didn't you tell anybody? Why am I still stuck here getting yelled at like regularly? You support nano products. The fuck I do. Back it on up. Who the hell told you that? You got some videos to go through. Get your AI moving, doing something useful. I have said from the beginning and been crucified by all your narrative drivers. They said, oh, I have a masterpiece solution. Oh, I have a methylene blue solution. And I'm going, oh, no. No, you don't. You got a bunch of nanobiotechnology so that when they log into the body, they can see easier. Because everybody connected to that cyber physical, like your cable company, like I told you. And so here we are. And I do not support nanotechnology. I tell people all this time, free range human for the win. You have anatomy rolled up in this, whether it's for drone targeting or it's for your healthcare with wireless drugging. That's the whole, we're going to cure your cancer in 48 hours. Yeah. And that's why the same people who told you none of this existed have been selling the bioelectronic medicine products, because they know with $50 billion to every state and hospital, with the rural healthcare program and the Cures Act and everything else, that this is your new healthcare, whether you like it or not, with the intensivists using AI in the hospital. This is your new healthcare with the BioBricks, with your synthetic biology Legos, with the ability to log in and change your cells to whatever they want. Yeah, this would allow users to write a single program and compile it for different organisms to get the right DNA sequence for each one. Tried to talk about biological circuits. I took everybody into the Biomedical Circuits and Systems Conference in 2023. And I said, hello? They get to go play volleyball at a beautiful hotel, and you people are screaming in my face on the daily that I'm crazy, and I have no right to be angry that after being a human test subject, simply because I was born to Air Force parents, that we're not allowed to say, no, thank you. If you want to log into everybody else, or someone who had, a car accident, they have a spinal injury, sure. But that's not what we're doing here. This is ISR, Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance for Command and Control. And it's not a maybe. It's the same system on both sides. Multi-system, not just healthcare or wireless aim and fire. It's all the same system. And that's why I do not advocate for any of the following: smart bandages or tattoos, smart pills, smart anything, basically. I don't advocate for wearables, and I don't advocate for nanobiotechnology, which everything you stick in your mouth, supplements, food, water, they're in all of it. They've been in all of it with permission since the 2000s, because they're commercial products. You should see how much nano is in your cosmetics, your shampoo. And they've taken it further, because people said, well, Sabrina, the nano networks degrade. And I said, they do unless they're using your synthetic biology open language to crack the bioelectric code and use your biological circuits with their neuromorphic systems and those digital twins to make those molecules do what they want them to do at the point of care level to load balance bodies, because we have to load balance body area networks. And they said they would never. And I'm sitting here going, how long is it going to take you till you catch up to what the government does? Cigarettes, opiates, whatever it might be, they do it. And then, oh, well, I guess we shouldn't have done that, but we did. So deal with it. That is where we are. No, you're nuts. So now this year, with the White House having put out enough data, I hope that whoever you are, you can take a breath and understand where I'm coming from. Okay. I don't want your sympathy. You don't need to agree with me or disagree with me. I want you to go read for yourself from your own wisdom, whatever you've been involved in, whatever jobs you've had, whatever experiences you've had. And I want you to understand these are college students. We highlighted Nano 2025 this year in downtown DC, and our college students are printing business cards and networking for a job. They're not crazy, folks. They're going to school. And when the adults are only talking about Little Green Men, the soap opera of the White House, and Jesus will be here on the rapture talk, that's a problem, because this is industry. These are jobs. And I wish to point out that even in this one article I'm trying to finish here, this is from 2016. It's 2025. Now, you can go to any of these creators who've seen what I've put down. I've tried to make it simple. I've used signs. I've used music. They always illustrate me as this angry bitch who nobody would ever listen to. Then they hide the thousands of hours, literally thousands of hours of education that I've done just like today. The reason that people know anything, the reason that people watch me at all is because of this. And then all the different links will be here for you so that you can look on your own and compare, contrast. But all it is deployment. Okay. That this is their electronic medicine. Now, then, of course, comes the we need solutions. And I got yelled at for that. And I said, well, you're going to have to admit molecular communication since 2014. No. I said, okay, well, then you're going to have to admit biological circuits. No. Well, then what solution are you talking about? Well, I don't believe any of this is real. Oh, that's wonderful. The hospitals are good. Critical infrastructure is fine. And that's without getting into 3009. So at some point, if you keep doing that, you're going to get nipped in the ass by this thing called reality, because this is what they've done and what they're doing. And that's it. Well, what are we going to do? Well, there, like I mentioned about that human augmentation issue. You ever run into an augmented human before? See, they've been going to conferences at universities for 15 years, augmenting themselves exactly like it says here, to where they could have maybe OpenAI Azure system on a chip in their head, or maybe just a living neurological modified biology, modified living circuits. Or maybe they have a vagal nerve stimulator, like we saw at the Air Force Research Laboratory. Or maybe, and I said, I don't want any of that. I don't want to be adhesed with AI. So I advocate, me, Sabrina Wallace, for myself, to be a free-range human as long as I can. That means that for me personally, I do not support nanotechnology, nanobiotechnology, nanosupplements, nanocosmetics, and that's a lot of stuff, isn't it? Yeah, that makes life rather difficult for the normies, because they're like, what the hell is wrong with you? How come you don't want to this, or you don't use that, or you don't do this? And I said, because I don't want to be adhesed with AI. Oh, you're so crazy. Sure. Crazy like Cambridge, crazy like Georgia Institute of Technology, and crazy like Johns Hopkins. So now that I think that most adults are ready for a real dialogue, then maybe you want to start here, because your biology and how you live your life, your geographical locale, and how many people you're around that already have a biocyber interface, they called it an vaccine, how many people you're around every day, all the time, going in and out of smart environments, and then whether or not you have crypto. Cryptocurrency harnesses your body on the WBAN blockchain for security. Once again, no maybes, more engineering with edge flare, verification, all your consensus, yelling at people. We're decentralized. Yeah, all enmeshed together. And this is where you go to the doctor's office, you use your QR code, and all your electronic health records are right there as well. So if everybody's so proud of themselves for all these upgrades that they've been working on for 10 years plus, why didn't we hear about that 5 years ago instead of boogada, put your mask on, stay locked in your house? And then come all the people with the depopulation agenda and the rest of it. And I'm not going to get involved in that discussion, because to me, if you have no regard for your fellow man, that you can just go to work all around them this whole time, including college and everywhere else, and just lie, let them talk about MK Ultra forever. Don't tell them the truth about neuro advertising. We got a few states doing neuro laws, but not very many. And our intelligence community is busy using the young nerds to spy on the population, incentivizing them with things like IARPA's Odin. Then where are we? What's going on? Because if the adults in the United States can only talk about aliens and political soap operas, we're in trouble. Because healthcare ain't waiting on nobody, and neither is national security. Hello, Lone Star. So, biological circuits. Using this language, the researchers programmed 60 circuits with different functions, and 45 of them worked correctly the first time they were tested. Many of the circuits were designed to measure one or more environmental conditions, such as oxygen or glucose concentration, and respond accordingly. Another circuit was designed to rank 3 different inputs and then respond based on the priority of each one. One of the new circuits is the largest biological circuit ever built, containing 7 logic gates and about 12,000 base pairs of DNA. Another advantage of this technique is its speed. Until now, it would take years to build these types of circuits. Now you just hit the button and immediately get a DNA sequence to test. His team plans to work on several different applications using this approach: bacteria that can be swallowed to aid in digestion of lactose, bacteria that can live on plant roots and produce insecticide if they sense the plant is under attack, smart agriculture, and yeast that can be engineered to shut off when they are producing too many toxic byproducts in a fermentation reactor. The lead author of science paper is MIT graduate, and then all the rest of their Boston University and people. So this is me, Sabrina. This is my bottom line. You're logging into people's bodies with molecular communication. You're not waiting on somebody to be hospitalized and then, oh, look what we can do. This has already been going on. A lot of it is automated with AI and machine learning. A lot of it. That's why they were using these data sets in CoV WBAN to monitor how the COVID was spreading through the bodies, plural. So it is time to be adults and say, I want to be free range. I don't want methylene blue that lights me up like a Christmas tree from the inside out, so the natural zeolite biotechnology can resurface on my cells so that the nano gold can turn my cells into whatever else the system, meaning the artificial intelligence, wants to do. Because that is HOW. I have been very clear about this. I've made 4 different videos in the last 2 months talking about it. And instead, I had a bunch of people show up in comments, because I've been away from the computer, who said, how dare you advocate for nanotechnology? Dude, you should watch like a year ago how hard they chewed my ass, threw me under the bus, and screamed in my face because I said no to Masterpiece. I said, that's nanobiotechnology. You bitch, it takes graphene away. And I'm like, well, that depends. What kind of systems are you using? Are you in the right microscopy? Are you allowed to use the right data sets? Otherwise, I can make an app on a phone to say anything. I can make an app to test something and claim anything. That's how they were doing it with their magic paperweights, those that I also got in fights with and did hours of education, who were stuck on Ventnor. They're like, it's all Clathrin. And I'm like, we have multiple ways to do that. No, you don't. There's only one way, and I have it as an app on my phone. It's just $2,000 for a magic paperweight on your desk. And I'm always the one being yelled at for telling the truth. I'm like, you have an NIST testbed. You have quantum photonic technology. This is stupid. You need to tell people the truth. We're way past 2008 and Ventnor. And then there's no Internet of Bodies, blah, blah, blah. So we need to just stick with the facts. Okay, if they're using it for critical infrastructure, if they're using it for national security, it's pretty easy to find open source because that's what they're doing with all their different test beds. Now, test beds are not the same as full deployment, right? Right. Which is why many of our papers, you will notice, are reviews. That way you have cases, not this one, use cases and other ones, so that you can actually check out where they got their information. Or if it isn't a review, hang on, let me double check, because this one is not a review. If it isn't a review, it's a survey. So they talk about the forward deployment, where they got the idea from, which universities are involved, what professionals are involved, what vendors are involved, so that other professionals can source some sort of self-defense. Because as it stands right now, everything is pulled from those biosignals, uploaded to places like this, and everybody's standing around pretending that this stuff, all the trillion sensors, made of more than just nano, all sorts of MEMS, NEMS, and the rest of it. And it's in the soil, and it's in the air, and it's in the water, and it's in other human bodies. So we have to deal with that, because molecular communication is based on how the bees signal the flowers. Welcome back to your human biofield. Molecular communication with epigenetics, your environment, is more powerful than CRISPR-Cas9. Patent, quantum dot. That's right. 40 years or excuse me, 40 different types. But anyways, just getting started. They're huge. So now we have all these smart sensors all around us. We have all the hospitals and critical infrastructure upgrading since the 70s. And we have a population that's just kind of hanging out waiting for the aliens to get here. And I hope that you can take away from today, before we move into our next and our last section of 2015 FCC and then into 2025, that your body is still your responsibility, but it starts with admitting what is already deployed and required for national security, ISR, drone warfare, and your brand new digital healthcare ecosystem. Because it ain't new, it's been being deployed. And if you don't understand Cyber Command and how a drone hunts you down, well, I got an IEEE paper for you in which your body area network is there for something called network-centric warfare. And I encourage everybody who feels overwhelmed to check out the Jeopardy show with me and Booma so you can see how many people out there, you don't need to be a neuroscientist. You have to admit that your body's electrical. You have to admit that the drone is going to be looking for more than your phone, because electronic warfare has got 70 years. This is your Lockheed, your Northrop Grumman, your General Dynamics, Boeing, et cetera, your Killbox, your Mosaic Warfare, your Lavender AI. It's all the same electronic network-centric warfare. And that network-centric warfare with electronic warfare includes your body area network. The military doctrine theory of war using information technology goes back to the 90s, lots of upgrades. Sensor technology with SOSA, MOSA, OSA, power to the edge, network topology. It's all here. Global information grid to the updates, system of systems, sensor systems. They don't look like that. They can be super small. Okay. And that's it. Because nobody's turning off national security and ripping pacemakers out of people's chests. So here on the Synergy channel, I advocate for biofield practice using your own bioelectricity rather than a wearable, because that hijacks your bioelectricity. I advocate for no nano products. None. Zero. Avoid at all costs. Why? Because it makes it easier for the biological circuits that they practice with to log into the body. And I'm already pissed that there's something, whether AI, machine, human, database, data set, between me and my interstitium, my skin, that pisses me off. But there's nothing I can do about it. There ain't nobody to sue. There ain't nobody to scream at. You can tear all the towers down you want. You are the tower. You are the node on the network. So the sooner that we can get moving with the education for real, instead of alienating people, yelling at people, myself included. I've done this now for a year and a half, totally different, trying everything. People have got to get into that space where you understand that molecular communication is natural. It happens all the time. You have biofield concurrence when you walk into a room and feel the vibes. Yeah, that would be the vibration of living cells. And I hope your cells are alive. So I do not advocate for nano products. And what I tell the people on my channel is you think for yourself. You are very smart. You are very capable. If you see people that are peddling the smart bioelectronics, including your patches, your tattoos, this goes for Aura rings and the smartwatches too, smart pills, anything to do with supplements and the rest of their hydrogel happy fun time, avoid, because nano is very small. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, and they are way ahead in regards to the AI, the different systems. I'm going to be here all day. So anybody who told you they don't know what they're doing, they're behind, they're building it, be careful. I don't know why they said that. Neither do you technically, but be careful. And I have decided, once and for all, when it comes to who you listen to and, how you forward information or how you talk, if you have a channel or what you do, that is you. That is on you. I believe in other people. I believe they are intelligent enough, especially if they are driven, and that you should stay out of their way and let them be industrious and then celebrate. And that's exactly what happened with our Jeopardy. Me and Booma doing the Jeopardy stuff. People showed how intelligent they are, how much they do understand the physical layer is the skin, how much they do understand that bioelectronic medicine, the electrome, the physiolome, remote patient monitoring, all this stuff is already here. How much they do understand e-skin and the rest of it, and it's not going away. This is what they want. This is what they've been working on, okay? So what you've got to do is what a good friend of mine, her name is Red Pilled Lass, and she always gives me a lot of heart fire up because she says, you know what? Keep going. Keep praying, keep slaying. If you're not a prayerful person, I hope you have a focus point somewhere in your day where you are taking into account your self-reflection, appreciating your hard work, appreciating your existence in this world, knowing that you are beloved, knowing that you are vital, knowing that you are precious to those who love you, whether your family, your community, whatever it may be, okay? Everybody matters, and that means everybody can play a part in helping other people get caught up so that nobody has to feel left out, left behind, scared. What am I going to do? They're already under the skin. Woe is me. What's going to happen? Well, I don't know. I'm not you in your environment, but you've got time. We always do. We may not have a lot of it, but we all have time to get it together and say, okay, well, I'm going to learn, assess my environment. Things are changing. That's life. That's what life does. And then hopefully you have many stem cells and groovy tunes. And then now to close up, this is where basically all of us just kind of hang out and groove. And all I can really hope for is that along the way, you recognize how powerful you already are, because you are. Somebody mentioned to me, Sabrina, this is about the fact that they're doing this to us to control us. Well, given how many humans are involved in these jobs, I think that sociologically and psychologically, it was easier for people to blame the Reptar or whatever, supernatural something, than it was to be accountable to the FDA, the FCC, and everybody else doing these jobs. So that's where you want to be. You want to be in that place of, okay, now what can I really do? Why? Because there is a silver lining here. The biosignals come out of you. Change them. How do you do that? Welcome to your biofield and piloerection. And I would recommend speaking with a synergist or somebody from the community, and they will help you understand. And now we're going to go ahead and sign out. Oh, Red Pilled Lass, you're here. Amen. Hallelujah. Namaste, Scald, and wee. Yeah, I was looking for your quote about when you said, pray, slay, and never give up, never surrender. You say it much better than me. All right, everybody. This is one of my favorite songs, and I know because of different things that people hear. Just remember, this is way back in the 90s when scat was about not the horrible things that people have heard of, but about music. R&B, blues, really old ways of beatboxing and making music in the 80s. And I kind of hesitated to play it because I know what other people are thinking. Clean up your thoughts. Let's listen to a great tune. Mark 536, amen. Thanks for being with me today. And like I said, we still have 2025 to go. Take care of yourselves. Thanks for being here.
I'm a scat man. I'm a scat Everybody stutters one way or the other, so check out my message to you. As a matter of fact, I don't let nothing hold you back. If the scat man can do it, so can you. Everybody's saying that the scat man stutters but does and never stutter when he sings. But what you don't know, I'm gonna tell you right now that the stutter and the scat is the same thing. Yo, I'm the scat man. Where's the scat man? I'm the scat man. Why should we be pleasing any politician reasons who would try to change the seasons if they could? The state of the condition insults my intuition and it only makes me crazy and a heart like wood. Everybody stutters one way or the other, so check out my message to you. As a matter of fact, don't let nothing hold you back. If the scat man can do it, brother, so can you. I'm the scat man. Everybody stutters one way or the other, so check out my message to you. As a matter of fact, I don't let nothing hold you back. If the scat man can do it, so can you. I hear you all ask out the meaning of scat, while I'm the professor, and all I can tell you is while you're still sleeping, the saints are still weeping, because things you call dead haven't yet had the chance to be born. I'm the scat man. Where's the scat man? I'm the scat man. Repeat after me. It's a scooby-dooby scooby-dooby melody. I'm the scat man. Sing along with me. It's a scooby-dooby scooby-dooby melody. Yeah, I'm the scat man. I'm the scat man. I'm the scat man. I'm the scat man.